meeting, which in actuality is a continuation of the meeting that we had on the 7th. So you may think that this is April 14th, but it's actually a continuation of the meeting on April 7th. So at this time, I would encourage you to rise and recite the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, would all the board members look to your right and wave to Mom? So. Anyway, could we get a sound check on the board members' microphones, please? Maria?
Sound check.
Are we okay with everybody's microphones? I think it's prudent for us to speak plainly and clearly into them throughout today's hearing. Okay, I'd like to turn your attention to the consent agenda. The consent agenda are contained, this agenda contains items that are usual and customary, and they can be voted on as a single item by the Board of Supervisors. However, any item on the 1, 2, 3 list could be pulled off by any member of the audience or a supervisor. So do I hear any request for removal of an item? Yes.
There was no announcements before you get to that point?
That's Supervisor Topanelli is asking me if there are any announcements regarding last week's meeting. I've got a pile of stuff here, assuming it's all related to agenda items today. So unless somebody can rush up here with a list of announcements, I don't think there are any announcements. Okay, any requests for removal of an item? Yes. Okay. All right. It's not a written report, but I've been asked to announce the formal 5-0 vote on the director of the building department. We've had a wonderful man, Jeff White, serving as an interim director for a good many months now, close to 2 years, I guess, and we voted the board unanimously to affirm Jeff White as the director of our building department. So is Jeff here today? I guess he's working. Which he's always working. So I have a little bit of a problem with item number 3 on this consent calendar, so I'd like to pull that off and ask Mary Mutz for an explanation.
Good morning, Mary Mutz, Agricultural Commissioner. Mr. Thomas, your questions, please.
Yes, Mary, what struck me as potentially problematic on this thing is it alludes to the fact that we can save $2,000 on this $82,000 contract has a potential for costing us $2,500 more than the lowest bid because of some scheduling, some delivery options. We had the bid proposal was requested for some company that could deliver within 3 days, or what was I'm struggling with that, but 3 days or 5 days, but the lowest responsible bid you said could deliver in 5 days instead of 7 days. What?
Well, the terms of the contract are to be able to deliver the chemical within 5 days. The Target Specialty Products claims that they could deliver the chemicals within 7 to 10 days. Wilbur Ellis stated they could deliver it within 3 days. We have had tremendous success working with Wilbur Ellis also in the past. They have had an exceptional quality of service. They're readily available when we need advice from the pest control advisor. and we're low on product and need to go forward.
Okay. All right, the other part of my question has to do with, these all seem to be name brand products, Roundup, Milestone, Transline. I think that there are generic products that have the same active ingredients, and I'm just curious about why these suppliers didn't offer generic products.
There certainly are generic products for some of those chemicals, and the first term of our contracts is that brands referenced in the product list are brand specific, and substitutes or equals to these brands will be considered at the discretion of the county. And none of the two respondents provided any generics.
Okay. I don't know whether any of the other supervisors have any questions on this particular item, but I thought that it might be worthwhile just revisiting this for a week or so, just to see if we can't save some money on the other products.
I'm ready to make a motion. By the time we spend staff time and copy time and cut a tree and make paper, we're going to spend part of the money. So for that amount, I would take the recommendation of staff on this.
Second.
Was that a second?
Yes, second. Discussion?
Yes, we have a motion and a second, but on the question.
I'll support this this time around, but I would appreciate in the next year or so, before this comes back to us, that we take a look at our whole approach to weed and pest abatement. Any alternative methods that could reduce poisons used would be something I would support, as long as they're economically feasible. And as I understand, there are some new products on the market that we may be dealing with old technology, and I'd at least like to review that for a less toxic approach to this.
I appreciate that, but I would like to say something in favor of the department and Public Works. A few years ago, we were using some rather harsh sterilants on the side of the road, and just making one application with these sterilants and some Roundup, and we are using more integrated pest management techniques by using just Roundup and a very mild soil sterilant, and then going back again with another application of Roundup. So with regards to integrated pest management, we are using some of the technology, but I can work with Public Works to see if there are some other softer, kinder, gentler chemicals, and the cost may be increased.
Okay, well, we're not interested in having costs go up a whole lot, but and that was specifically why I brought it up. But anyway, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say, well, let me this is on the single item. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, do we have a motion on the remaining two items?
I move.
Second.
Moved and seconded for the other two items on the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, that brings us to the regular agenda. We have public comments, and this is the time when anybody wishing to address the board on any item not on the agenda, please come forward. Bear in mind that I will be limiting time on this particular aspect of the agenda for 5 minutes and 5 minutes only. Thank you. Please state your name.
My name is Evelyn McCluskey. I live in Diamond 20 in Copperopolis. 5 years ago, when we moved on our property, I put in a 10-stall, very nice horse barn. I called the county and said I'd like a permit to board a couple of horses, and they told me it was residential, and I couldn't do that. So today my barn stands empty. However, across the street from us, the people have turned their entire 20 acres into an off-road dirt bike track. It's been in there for 2.5 years. There was no environmental impact report made. There was no notification of the neighborhood of the impact it would have on us. There were no permits asked for or issued. There was no proof of any kind of insurance. We were told that because it was recreational and it was on their property, that was fine. Last summer, Supervisor Thomas stood on my front porch and watched the dirt billow up in great clouds. This past week, one day, we needed a dust mask inside the house just to breathe. It was that bad. You couldn't even see the roads. They bring in children and adults from all over. They ride after school. They ride on weekends. They ride on holidays. They ride all through the summer. Easter morning at 6:45 a.m. they started. They laid it down at 6:30 p.m. During that time, the noise was like a freight train going through your house. The only problem was there was no end to the freight train. It lasted for 12 hours. They said that they did this to keep their kids off drugs. Well, let me tell you, after 12 hours, my family was looking for drugs. I have a solution to this problem. Since there's no regulations, we have decided that we'll put a golf course on our 22 acres. We've got 2 ponds, trees, grass, everything that we need, and we will invite everybody from the county to come out and play. It sounds funny, but it really isn't if you're living with it day after day. And I'm sure if these old boys here in Calaveras County find out that they can do anything with their property as long as it's recreational, I can see the pot growers turning their places into rifle ranges or outdoor theaters. And you know what? My family is NASCAR people. We just might consider putting a racetrack on ours. I don't see why anybody could do anything about it. The county's done nothing about the dirt bike tracks. And it's not just ours. I've talked to people in planning. They say they get complaints all over the county. Last year I stood before the board along with dozens of people from down at the lake begging for a noise ordinance. Nothing was done.
Ms. McCloskey, you have about a minute left, but if I'm stopping your time just to respond to that specific thing. We have, it's my understanding that at the last meeting of April, we have a review of the noise, the nuisance noise ordinances coming back to us. I apologize for this taking so long, but I wanted to ask you, I had suggested to you a number of times, and it's true that I went out and saw the unbelievable dust clouds, but I gave you a contact with our environmental control.
We contacted them. They came out and talked to the lady there, and she said she knew exactly what she was doing, and she didn't care. And they said, as long as we're not here to see it, or you don't have movies of it, there's nothing we can do about it.
Okay. Well, I would encourage you to call Lockmere the next time that it's you know, the dust is going off their property. That's the rule, that if it's going off their property, and it certainly was the day that I was out there. I will acknowledge that. The noise and the dust was going significantly off their property. Okay.
It certainly was. We need a code change also.
Mm-hmm.
Other counties in California have them to regulate something like this, so that, you know, when I bought the property and I put everything we had in retirement to build it up, it was supposed to be a nice, peaceful place. Now my property value has hit rock bottom. Nobody is going to buy my place when they come out and they see and hear what's going on across the road. I would really appreciate it if you would consider a code change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. McCloskey. Anyone else wishing to address the board on an item not on the agenda this morning?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Al Segala, Board of Supervisors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here on a new item. This is an Assembly Bill 268. Assembly Bill 268 is a form of tax protest, but even more than that, it's a regulatory protest. In the past, the Board of Supervisors made extensive comments on the Law 885, which is state revision of the septic regulations, which are just a horrible regulatory abuse, and which, if they were enforced, would bring about tremendous economic damage to our community. Well, now we have before us an Assembly Bill 268 by Gaines, which is the most simple legislation that we've probably ever seen. It simply repeals 885. Wow, what a solution. I understand it's in committee now at the state capitol, and that the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association is hoping to get people to go there and comment on it. I don't know if it will emerge from committee or not, but if it does, I would encourage you to support that bill to repeal 885. The Calaveras County Taxpayer Association would really appreciate it, and I'm sure the property owners in the county would as well. Tomorrow, we're having a tea party, and you're so welcome to come. And our hope at the tea party in downtown Angels Camp will result in more people becoming part of our association, and also part of a movement that would hopefully bring sanity fiscal sanity at the level of federal government and the state government. We don't know if that'd be possible, or even if the taxpayers can be that organized, but we're going to make a try. And so you're so welcome to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Segala.
Good afternoon or good morning, supervisors. My name is Les Martin from Valley Springs, and to go on a little bit more with what Al Segala just said, there are actually two bills, AB 268 and AB 916. 268 is basically that short one to say to repeal the stupid 885, pardon the way I'm being, and 916 by Long or Logue, I think out of Fair Oak, somewhere around there, is basically to put the control of the septics and the wells back in the hands of the county health departments, and they are both being heard today in Sacramento. So any support that the county can give to bring this back into either our control or to repeal 885 in its totality would sure be appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Anyone else wishing to address the board this morning? Okay, if not, I'll turn your attention to agenda item number 5. This is an item to discuss the applicability of the board policy resolution 07242 regarding criteria for discretionary development projects to project 2008-060. This is a tentative parcel map for Barksdale at 5446 Pool Station Road. Do we have comments from staff on this?
Yes, Chairman Thomas, supervisors. The request before the board is for an exemption from the board policy regarding the division of land into less than 40-acre parcels in areas without public water or sewer, as expressed in Resolution 7242, which was adopted by the board in November of 2007. The applicant is proposing the division of approximately 100 acres on Pool Station Road into 4 10-acre parcels and a 60-acre remainder. The resulting parcels would be served by on-site wells and septic systems. The property is currently zoned residential agriculture, 10-acre minimum parcel size, with a general plan designation of future single-family residential, 5-acre minimum density. For the western part of the property and natural resource lands, mineral resource areas for the eastern part. This project is consistent with the existing general plan and zoning designations. However, the segment of Pool Station Road that would serve the project is rated at a level of service D, Because of the level of service on that section of Pool Station Road, the minimum parcel size is 40 acres until the road is improved to an LOS of C. The application and tentative parcel map for this project was received in July of 2008, approximately 8 months after the board adopted its policy that requested all discretionary land use applications be consistent with one or more of the 4 criteria. Specific to this project is the criteria that all divisions of land be served by public water and sewer unless the parcels are in excess of 40 acres or only one additional parcel would be created. This project is not consistent with that policy. The applicant asserts that he should be exempt from that policy direction because he has performed substantial work at considerable expense based on direction from planning and public works staff that he would be able to, and assurances that he would be able to divide his property, and that he began that process of consulting with staff before the board's policy took effect. However, staff has indicated that although Mr. Barksdale did request information from staff prior to the adoption of the policy, there was no pre-application consultation, and he was not instructed to do any project-related road work, conduct any studies, or proceed with any site development prior to submitting his application. Staff also asserts Mr. Barksdale was informed that Pool Station Road in the vicinity of his property was LOSD, which would only allow parcels of 40 acres or more unless the applicant was willing to improve the road. Expenses incurred by the applicant prior to submitting this application were primarily related to installation of a well, routing of power to the property, and grading of a road, which was characterized in the grading permit as an improvement of an existing driveway and to provide access for one additional residence. It was not part of any pre-application preliminary work at staff's recommendation or direction, and if it was done in preparation for the proposed land division, would have been contrary to the normal project review and permitting process. Public Works has repeatedly expressed its opposition to this project as indicated in the letters and memos in your packet. It is their determination, and planning staff concurs, that the project as proposed is not only inconsistent with the board's policy, but would also be inconsistent with the general plan unless the applicant is willing to improve the impacted portion of Pool Station Road to an LOSC. Because the application for project 2008-60 was submitted after the board's policy was adopted, the applicant was not actively working with the county prior to initiation of that policy, and the applicant did not perform substantial work or incur substantial expense in good faith reliance on staff's direction prior to submitting this application. Staff considers this application to be inconsistent with board's direction and recommends that the board deny the applicant's request for an exemption from the provisions of that policy.
Okay, do the supervisors have any questions of staff? Okay. Is the applicant here or the applicant's representative?
My name is Jessica Arola. I think I've met all of you a long time ago. The problem that I have is that Sam and I came to Public Works and the building department, and we knew the road was a level service D. He originally wanted to split it into 10-acre parcels, but because of what Robert Packinger said and numerous people from the building department, they said go for 4 and a remainder. So Sam went ahead with the project. They said, oh, no, there'll be no problem, even though, because staff, it'll be fine. 4 and a remainder without upgrading the road. Sam went ahead with his plans, and now you guys are saying that he can't do what he intended to do. And I think it's ridiculous that Public Works is pretending that they don't even remember the project or anything. We had a map. We had another person that worked in Public Works that was a witness to it. And to be honest with you, I'd like to bring her in so that she can tell you that this did happen. And it's shocking to me that everybody's denying in Public Works that they knew that Sam was going to go for 4 and a remainder. He's not trying to do something that he wasn't told he could do. So I'm just telling you, I mean, I have another witness. Would you like me to bring them in too? Because, I mean, it's ridiculous. He would have gone for the whole split. He chose to do forward and remainder at the recommendation of Robert Packinger. And I was there with Sam.
Okay, Jessica, is that person that you've mentioned, is she?
No, they're not here right now, but I'm preparing to get a statement from them. Sam is here. Sam would probably like to speak on that too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
I feel like we're beating a dead horse here. Everybody knows what's going on and how we got to this point, and I keep bringing it up, and I really don't like to. I'd like to move forward if we could. But the fact of the matter is, she's right. We were told we could have 4 and a remainder with a level of service D. More than one time, Mr. Packinger told me that. Now he doesn't recall, and we're having to fight to get past this portion of it. But we have a proposal to get past that, and Mr. Barksdale is going to speak on that right now, that would, hopefully we can move us forward in this project. That's what we're going to try to do now, to go forward with this thing. I don't want to beat a dead horse anymore. It's just not getting us anywhere. So, having said that, Dennis Barksdale is going to speak.
Okay,
Do you all have the letter that he sent, he emailed everybody?
Yes. Before he comes up, does any board member have a question of Mr. Mosby? Okay.
We did go to great lengths to do our due diligence. We spoke with numerous people in Public Works and the Building Department to get our information correctly. And we've spoken to all of you. You all know what's going on here. I don't know where to go from here except move forward. What can we do to move forward? Mr. Barksdale has a plan to move forward. If anybody has any questions, I'm glad to answer them. We didn't try to hide anything from anybody. The road we put in was for access to our property. The road that was existing was not wide enough. It was only 12 foot wide. It's very dangerous. You have to back all the way down. So that's why we widened the road, and we did it through Public Works with permits and engineering and the whole enchilada. Dennis.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Dennis Barksdale with Claiborne Engineering. I'm the engineer. We did a record of survey on the property.
Could you speak up, please?
Yes, my name is Dennis Barksdale. I'm with Claiborne Engineering. We did the engineering for the road. We are also a part owner in the property, which we acquired after we became aware of the project. I think that we can't continue to argue about what was said and what wasn't said. But what I think we can do is we can point out the fact that the property and the price that was purchased for is directly related to the ability to split it. So without being able to split the property, we wouldn't have purchased the property. I mean, that's just common sense. So that's just a fact. The other fact is that we've spent roughly close to $1 million on the property. So we bought the property, we developed a roadway on the property that was already there in an attempt to build a house in the back portion of the property. We did not try to circumvent any county codes, none. But we did, at the time, we were financially able to build a house. So we wanted to move forward, building a house. We felt that it would increase the value of the property by building a nice home in the back along a roadway that was already there. So that's why we did what we did. We were trying to increase the value of the property. We were not trying to circumvent any codes. We were not trying to bug anybody. We were not trying to cause any problems. I think that one of the things that we have to deal with is the zoning, and the general plan says that the property can be zoned 5 acres and 10 acres. It does say that. Now, there is something that has been done, a resolution that along the way that's been passed, that says that we have to have sewer and water to the site, which is unfeasible for this property. So the general plan is in conflict with your desires. So from my standpoint, looking on the outside, I was not at the meetings when Sam and Jessica and people from my office met with county staff. All I have is what they told me that was said. Nothing led me to believe otherwise. Everything from a professional standpoint, looking at the site, looking at the transportation corridor that is Pool Station Road, looking at the rim fee that was set aside to develop Pool Station Road, everything led me to believe that backing up and not trying to do 5-acre parcels, just going ahead and negotiating four 10-acre parcels and owner's remainder, which I think that even county staff will say will not have any impact on that road. None. It'll have zero impact as far as transportation or anything else. I also think that we should point out that the use of wells and septic systems is something that has to be brought through the county and approved. This is all things that happen, and there's many properties in the county that have wells and have septic systems, and they work fine. Now, there are some areas where they don't. We're not asking for a building permit until we have a usable well. We're not asking for a building permit until we have a usable septic system. It's our desire to use a new method that actually reclaims water that we can use for irrigation. It processes wastewater, turns it into Title 22 usable water that we can irrigate on our site. That's what our desire is. And we're looking to process 5 parcels, not more, not, that we have 3 partners in this project. Our whole desire was have 3 homes for us, have 2 parcels to help us pay for the infrastructure that was needed. We've developed a plan which you see, it provides for mitigation for the fact that the level of service of Pool Station Road is D. We will do the work necessary to provide the plans and the right-of-way documents to bring that road up to a level of service C from the area where it is deficient to our southern boundary. That work, in my estimation, will cost well in excess of $150,000. We're willing to pay that. We're also willing to pay our rim fees. That rim fee for 5 parcels is $16,500. That means that we'll pay a total of about $165,000. That is 10 times what the rim fee is, 10 times. So we're looking to mitigate for something that we're put in a position of owning when we thought that we could develop it. But we're willing to do this. We're willing to do this out of our own nickel. We're not asking for the county to pay any of that. We are asking that we be allowed to process building permits for 3 homes, and we will wait, and we will work with the county to delay the development of the other 2 parcels for some reasonable length of time. All we're looking at is we're looking at some method to not lose our shirt on this property. And we still believe in it. We still go there. I purchased my portion of the property after I surveyed it. So after I was out there surveying the property, I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was nice. I thought it was a good place to live. I still think it's a good place to live. So that's where we are. I can answer any questions you have on the letter I sent. Yeah.
Okay. Any board members wishing to ask a question? I'd like it better when I can see people, but okay, I have one question, Mr. Barksdale. I went into the Public Works Department and kind of reviewed the file, and the date on the application for the driveway encroachment permit is September 11th. Yes, September the 11th of 2007. There's a note on the back here that I think it must be something that was penned by you or a representative of your company that says that this serves a maximum of 2 parcels on that roadway. That's sort of brings up in my mind, at least raises a question of why does it say that it serves a maximum of 2 parcels when you were intending all along, or at least at this point in time, that you had intended to do 4?
The purpose of that is because at the time it was serving 2 parcels. It serves Mr. Rader, who's a neighbor, who travels through our property on an easement to get to his property, and it would serve the residents. We did this in an attempt to get the building constructed our whole intent was to move forward on building the structure. We knew that it would take some years to get through the process of doing the tentative map and the final map on the parcel. So it was an attempt to move forward to develop the property At the same time, we were telling the truth. It was 2 parcels. It wasn't, the application wasn't in. We all know that if we move forward with the tentative map, we can't develop anything until after the tentative map is approved.
Okay.
So the parcel right now can be split into 2 40s, or two parcels that are larger than 40. So we can build 2 homes if we do a 40-acre lot and a 67-acre lot. So truthfully, we could build 2 homes on the parcel now. We weren't trying to get any more than, our intent was always to build 5, I will say that. My intent was also to move faster so I could develop a house because I wanted to move there. So there were 2 things going on there, and I acknowledge the fact that it would take time to go through the county process. We were perfectly willing to go through that time. It's just that we want to develop the property as we're going through it.
Okay, so what you feel like that you have designed is a project that has 20-acre density, and you're clustering 4 of the houses.
Correct. Correct. It would turn out to be 107 acres. It would be essentially a 20-acre density with a, essentially, yes.
Okay, well, describing the project like that kind of makes it go down easier. It's a 20-acre density project rather than 4 10s. But anyway, that's for the rest of the board to decide. Yes, Mr. Supervisor Walensky?
Yeah, I do have one question on a matter that you haven't remarked upon this morning yet. There are properties around us that are ag properties. There's several preserves and a number of RA properties as well that pretty much go 3 full sides of it. Do you have any comments on the potential impact to the ag operations that are extant in the area?
Our property, when we develop the 5 parcels, we'll develop about less than 10% of the whole property. In other words, 90% is going to remain in a natural state. The back 40 acres won't be touched at all, as according to our plan as it currently exists. So we're looking at a situation where over 90% of the entire property is going to remain the way it looks now. That's our whole intent. We love the way it looks. We love the way it feels out there. It's not our intent to bulldoze everything and to move things around and to change the way the trees are. Our intent is to plant more trees. Our intent is to make it a better place to live. So I don't believe that it's going to affect the agricultural folks around us. It's not our intentions to do that. It brings up a good point too in the zoning of the property, and I don't want to belabor everything, but the way the zoning is, the folks around us could have certainly purchased the property. The problem was that the zoning allows for it to be split, and now the general plan. So the truth is that the value of the property is kind of superficial if we can't split it. So we go in and we purchase a property for a price that the neighbors aren't willing to pay because they know that as an agricultural property, it's not worth it. So here we are, we're kind of stuck, we're kind of clouded up because we go purchase a property with the concept of developing it. They can't purchase a property because it's worth too much. So they're kind of jammed up, we're jammed up. And I think that's an unfortunate situation. I think that, you guys are the supervisors. You guys do a lot of hard work on the general plan and on how the county moves. From a person's perspective coming in, trying to buy a piece of property and trying to do a split and maybe, live here, it's hard because we look at the general plan and we did not see that code or that resolution. And I'm not even sure it was there when we got it, when we purchased the property. So, we're looking at the overlay. It looks good. Everything feels good. The transportation corridor Pool Station Road is shown as a rim road. So from, looking at it, we think, wow, this is cool. This is everything we always wanted. And there we are,
Okay, any other questions of the board? Okay, thank you, Mr. Barksdale. Any other member of the public wishing to comment on this item? Come forward and identify yourself, please.
Al Segala with the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. We have sympathy for the regulatory underdog, and we haven't studied this particular issue, but what we've heard so far, 2 things seem to come to mind. One, that people were sincere and were following the law as they knew it, and we're dealing with county representatives. I believe them when they said that they talked to the planning department and they had green light and which later was changed. I don't think they were not telling the truth. And the second issue is a policy change that the board did that may need to be rethought. The idea of not allowing parcels to be split less than 40 acres without public water and sewer can have some unintended consequences. Perhaps now is the first of these. The best zoning would be such that allows the people to use their property as they see fit. It does no harm to the neighbors or to the public. Concepts of government officials or others wanting to redesign the use of other people's property tends to result in oppression and discourages economic development or all development and actually hurts people. So I would recommend at the appropriate time that the Board of Supervisors revisit this rule that splits less than 40 acres must have public water and sewer, because public water and sewer is simply not available, and which means that the property cannot be split. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sagala. Mr. Buckley, how are you?
Good morning, John Buckley, Central Sierra Environmental Resource Center. Not sure. I would point out that for many years our center and others have come before this board with concerns over projects that have both water and sewer, and that many members of the public have also expressed concerns. And in response to that, all this board did with a policy in 2007 is simply pass a resolution limiting divisions of land to 40 acres or more with other exceptions during the time period pending completion of the general plan update work program and the certification of the EIR. If you look on page 3 of your staff report, according to Public Works staff, Mr. Barksdale was advised that the level of service for Pool Station Road in the vicinity of the project was D. He was not instructed to do any project-related road work, and goes on to give the perspective from Public Works staff that there was an attempt to circumvent the normal permitting process. At the bottom of that page, it reads, regarding the applicant's statement concerning the amount of time and expenses spent on this project, there is nothing to support the assertion that substantial time and considerable expense was incurred at the direction of county staff. Obviously, everyone who invests money would like to move quickly to get a return on that money. But in this case, you have a policy that should be applied consistently and fairly, rather than change simply because someone comes forward and has a situation where they would like to creatively change what the policy applies to. And again, I would emphasize that this simply holds off on the applicant being able to do what he's proposing to do until the adoption of the general plan update and certification of the EIR. And finally, Mr. Barksdale just complained that he can't split it. He said that twice, but he can split it if he simply follows what the county requires, which is to bring the level of service on the road up to the level of C for the entire road as is required to make that able to be split. There are those options, including waiting for the general plan to be implemented, which would then no longer make this policy resolution applicable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Anyone else wishing to address the board?
Good morning. I'm Leroy Rader, and I've got a letter here, and I've got one for each board member and for the county clerk. Yeah, one for the board, and then there's some for the court. I'm the property owner. We join him on the back side, on the west and the north. We wrote this letter, and I'll read it to you, and then if there's any questions, we'll go from there. Dear board members, we're strongly urging you to deny Mr. Mosby's request that Crazy Horse Estates Incorporated be granted an exception to Board Resolution number 07242. We firmly believe and agree with both Calaveras County Planning Department and Public Works that Mr. Mosby was not working with county staff, but was actually attempting to circumvent proper procedures for a subdivision development. When the property was listed for sale, we called planning to find out what the zoning was, as we were very concerned about what might be built next door to us. We were told that it was zoned RA10, but Pool Station Road was a level of service D, and the minimum lot size that could be created was 40 acres. We're the adjoining neighbors for about 1.25 miles, the north and west side. So Mr. Mosby and his associates, real estate developers from Elk Grove, they purchased this property with the intent to subdivide, fully aware that Pool Station Road is a level of service D. At their time of the purchase, April 2007, the general plan stated the minimum density was 40 acres on roads of level service D. The general plan's online for anyone in the public to view. In Mr. Mosby's letter to the board, he admits that he proceeded forward with his project based on the undocumented verbal representative of Mr. Packinger. He don't have any record of that, no signed thing or anything, no documentation, that there was some loophole to allow circumventing level service D restriction. Public Works says they don't know anything about that conversation. So then the developer makes a request for a grading permit for a road to service a single-family residence in the fall of 2007. Well, this road encompassed the road that I built in 1970. And then we got a recorded easement for me and my wife to get to our residence and our ranch. So we're pretty concerned about this, any actions being taken on the road. Our only source of access to our house and our ranch. So we met with Mel Aldrin of Public Works to review the grading plans and express our concern. Well, one of our main concerns was they're planning to split the property, and they were not performing all the proper procedures for a subdivision. Mel stated he was unaware of any such intention and showed us the proposed grading map, which indicated one home site. Well, the grading permit was issued in May of 2008. The plan was reviewed for the service of our house, existing residents, and their one proposed home site. So immediately they began moving dirt. They took all the road base out of the road that I put there. 30 years we've been working on it. Culverts, tore all the culverts out, tore out my paved encroachment, which we put in 1971. In July, they just quit. All the work comes to a halt. What the hell's going on here? Nothing. So in September, we go and talk to the county, see what's going on. They got to finish this road before winter comes. Well, we're going to get in there if it gets muddy. Well, they didn't do nothing. So then in November 20th, 2008, we get a little help. State Water Resources comes along and they says, hey, you better start doing something. You're in violation here. They threatened them with a fine of $10,000 a day for erosion control. And after that, they come out and they did a little bit and got it passed so that it survived through the winter. Well, they haven't done anything. I guess not good for us, but thank God it was a dry winter. So now they've got a month left to finish it, according to me, on their permit, including the pavement. And they put in for a house, and they haven't started any construction on one house, nothing. So as you're aware, before a subdivision can be approved, numerous environmental studies must be completed. The level of scrutiny is based upon the number of parcels being created. More than 2 parcels is a tentative parcel map, and more than 4 is a subdivision map. Permits and work can be done on an existing parcel for a single-family resident with a bare minimum of review. Mr. Mosby has obtained permits and done a substantial amount of work under the disguise of a single family. They're going to put one house in there, right? One example has been, they never conducted an oak tree study. A lot of oaks have been cut down, pushed, live oaks, white oaks, black oaks. They've been destroyed, bulldozed out, burned up. They applied for their tentative parcel map less than 2 months after the issue of the grading permit. After all that work had been done, they tore everything up. In their application for the tentative parcel map, they even state that they eventually plan to develop the remaining parcel to their true intent for a full subdivision. That's total disregard for the permitting process. So we're strongly urging you to deny this. It don't meet the criteria being served by public water and sewer. Does not meet the criteria being served by a level service C road, and will eventually be rejected. So it's a complete waste of time and the county staff and resources to pursue this any further. I mean, this is far enough. Stop it now. I thank you. If you got any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Rader?
I mean, I buy cows sometimes and I pay too much money for it, so I take it. You don't win all the time. They paid too much. That's the way it is.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
I would
Rader.
like to ask one question.
Oh, yes, Supervisor Walensky.
I'll ask the same question I asked the previous speaker, which is what effect do you think this particular proposal will have on ag operations or surrounding ag properties?
Anytime you have a subdivision to ag, that's the end of agriculture. I don't care if it's 2 houses, 4 houses, whatever. Anytime you put something next to ag, you have nothing but problems. You've got kids, you've got dogs, like the lady said, you've got motorcycles, you've got people running all over you. We've already got problems. They put a big road in. The other night I went home, and here comes 2 fellas out of, the wife had went home. We keep our gate locked, because we've got this major road now. She went home ahead of me. She left the gate open. I come back 15 minutes later. Here comes a car out of our place. 2 guys in it. Tattoos all over them. I said, what's going on here? Well, we're on this road. There's a shortcut to Hunt Road. This road goes to Hunt. I said, no, it don't go to Hunt Road. Well, I was going home. I had a load of horses in the trailer. I had a gooseneck on. Halfway up, I meet these guys. Well, I'd already locked the road gate. So now I got to back down, let these 2 yokels out that don't have any business there. Nah, I'll tell you what it does. It's no good. That's what it is. So, it's nothing but problems. You preach agriculture, you want it, and then you let something like this go in? No, it don't work. Any more questions? I'm on a roll.
Ask if you dare, folks.
Hi, I'm Libby Rader-Kasich, and I have a letter here signed by us and many of our neighbors. I'd like to present it to you. And I have a copy.
Libby, before you start, I want to just kind of bring this back to a sense of time reality here. I let Mr. Rader keep going and going because I hadn't announced that they were really short on time today, so I'm kind of, from here on in, I'm going to start.
This letter's a little bit shorter than his.
Okay.
Okay, I have a copy for everyone, too.
All right. In the next hearing, I'm going to be limiting people to 3 minutes, so we're going to give you a little bit of latitude since I didn't announce it ahead of time.
Dear board members, we would like to commend you on your passage of Resolution 07242 in the interim of the general plan update. We are very pleased to see that the board recognizes the scarcity of water in this county and the irresponsibility to continue to rely on groundwater as a dependable source, especially for high-density development. The proposed tentative parcel map 2008-060 by Crazy Horse Estates, Inc. is a prime example of why this resolution is needed. The site of this proposed high-density 10-acre development lies 4 miles southwest of San Andres on Pool Station Road. It is at least 3 miles from any source of public water, CPUD, and even farther for public sewer. The entrance to the project is serviced by nearly 3 miles of level of service D road. The 106-acre property lies right in the middle of a very large block, thousands of acres of contiguous ag preserve land. The possibility for future development of public water and sewer in this area is nearly non-existent. This is ag land used for livestock grazing. In order for livestock to be able to utilize the grazing, they must have sources of water. This is provided by natural springs. These springs are also utilized by the wildlife in this area. The drilling of wells, up to 10 in this area, poses a great threat to the viability of the springs and the livestock industry and the wildlife that they support. Reports written by both Planning Department and Public Works clearly state that the applicants were not working with county staff, but were in fact trying to circumvent proper protocol. Their tentative parcel map was filed 7 months after the board passed the resolution 7242, which is a strong indication that they were not working with county staff. All the improvements were done after the passage of resolution under the permits issued for a single-family residence, clearly intent to circumvent proper procedures. When the investors for Crazy Horse Estates, Inc. purchased the property, the general plan clearly stated that Pool Station Road was a level of service D, and 40 acres is the minimal lot size that can be created on property serviced by a level of service D road. Anyone who drives down Pool Station Road can see its inadequacies and substantial amount of work necessary to improve it to a level of service C. The county did not have, nor does it have, any immediate plans for the improvement of Pool Station Road. Any investment made based on improvement of Pool Station Road would be considered a risky, long-term investment. It is not the duty of this board to bail out the poor business decisions of out-of-county developers. Please protect the rights of the citizens of this county. We urge you to have the strength and integrity to uphold your resolution and deny any exceptions, especially those based on hearsay and deception. This was signed by Leroy and Sandy Rader, Jim and Karen Hagan of Angels Camp, John and Bonnie Tiscornia of San Andres, Jim Waters of San Andres, Bud B. Psyche of San Andres, Dennis and Susan Baskin of San Andres, and myself and my husband, Dave Kasich of San Andres. One other comment that I would like to make about, they say they want to improve Pool Station Road. In order to improve Pool Station Road, they have to acquire access, because Pool Station is, anyway, let's see, it's in the Public Works memo, November 17, 2008, states, in order to upgrade the level of service, various improvements are necessary, including widening the travel lanes, shoulders, improving the horizontal curvature of Pool Station Road, may necessitate acquisition of right-of-way to accommodate improvements. To avoid obligating the county to undertaking procedure for possession of pursuant to Subdivision Map Act 666-462, the applicant would have to demonstrate ability to acquire right-of-way prior to project approval. We are the owners of the land that Pool Station Road runs through, and I can tell you right now, we're not granting any more right-of-way. They're going to have to do it through eminent domain. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to address the board?
My name is Dave Kasich. I live at 4865 Pool Station Road. And I wasn't going to get up to speak, but I sat here and listened to the gentleman that wants to put the subdivision in, Barksdale, Mr. Barksdale, and he talks about character and being a good neighbor. Well, about 3 or 4 months ago, he came out and did a survey on the road, Pool Station Road. Now, you'd think a good neighbor would come and ask somebody if you could trespass. All that Pool Station Road, there's probably 1,000 metal tags on these trees. They never asked anybody if they could come on their property. Metal tags with nails. I have a problem with that. That shows bad character to me. They stand up there and they tell you they got good character and good faith. That just proves to you folks right there, there's no good character and good faith there when they come in and nail metal tags well inside the fence lines. Well inside the fence lines. It's not just right on the fence line. It's inside. You had to climb through the fences. Now, a lot of you are aware of what it takes to keep the fences up. When we have these yo-yos crossing over my fence line, I have a problem with it. That shows bad character. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kasich.
I'd like to speak on character. I'm personally embarrassed by the way the Raiders have treated me and the Mosbys and everybody else. There's been threats, and I mean, they want to talk about character. It's awful. I've been yelled at. It's absolutely horrible. And Leroy, I believe, lives on a 20-acre parcel. So, I mean, what, the rules change for him? I don't. To me, the issue is that Public Works said that he could do 4 and a remainder. I was there was another witness, and there was Sam. And that is why he went ahead with the project. He wasn't trying to screw the county or do anything to hurt the neighbors. If anything, he's been nice to Leroy and the whole family, and they've treated him like garbage. And I am embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to live here.
Thank you, Jessica.
I hope this is the last time. If I could go back, I would have never purchased this property. If Mr. Packinger would have told me, Sam, you can't split it, we wouldn't be here. If Mr. Rader would have told me he wanted to buy the property, when I asked him the first day I met him, I told him, do you want it? I won't make an offer. Well, no, it costs too much money. It costs too much money because of the zoning. And that's exactly why we bought it. It's in the middle of the ag. It's perfect. This is what we wanted. Nothing else is going to be developed out there. We're going to put 4 homes, maybe 5 homes in 107 acres. Nothing's going to change. We're not going to do anything other than build beautiful homes out there. And as far as character, Mr. Rader, Mr. Siscornia have threatened me, my family, my employees almost daily. I hear this but I haven't said anything until now because I'm tired of it. And frankly, if they wanted to buy the property, they should have bought it. We bought it. We did everything we were supposed to do by the direction of Public Works. They gave us information. We went with it. I have witnesses. I know, Mr. Tryon, you're sick of looking at me. You're sick of hearing this. Well, I'm sick of saying it. We'd just like to move forward with this project. You have any questions for me? We didn't do anything illegal. We didn't do anything to try to circumvent anybody or anything. I've turned my cheek every time Mr. Rader has called me up and chewed me out for whatever he feels like, and I just let it go. I let it go. It's okay. Anybody have any questions for me? Because I'll tell you the truth, and I've told the truth from day one. As far as that road, somebody ought to drive out there and take a look at it now. You can get up and down that road. You couldn't before.
Okay, Mr. Mosby, thank you. Supervisor Walensky.
Before we go any further on any of the hearings that we have today, I'd like to correct an apparent misimpression. If there's anybody in this room who thinks that character assassination, personalizing issues, disrespecting one another, scores any points with anybody on this board, I think you have another thing coming. We have issues before us, and they're profound. They involve a lot of things that are pretty fundamental to the character of these communities. They include who's just come here and who's been here a long time, what the values and what the underlying principles or core values that a community has. And we challenge one another in projects like this to define ourselves and to figure out exactly who we are and where we're going. But none of this will be aided by the level of discourse just proceeding. And my hope is that we can get back on the issue, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Well said. Mr. Ciscornia.
Okay, my name is John Ciscornia. I live in San Andreas. We have the property on the south side of this development. As far as me threatening this individual, I don't even know who this guy is. I've never seen him. I don't even know if I've ever talked to him. I've had a couple of phone calls from people that say they represent this property. I've never talked to anybody person to person, so I don't even know who this guy is. My objection to this thing is you're splitting up a piece of property, and somebody mentioned it, ag preserve and all. I mean, it isn't all that ag preserve, but it's all big parcels that go from Hogan to Maloney's. There's a strip of property in there. If you got out a map, it's probably one of the biggest non-developed pieces of property in this county, and it might be the biggest contiguous undeveloped piece of property. And I hate this, when you get a chink in the armor, it starts going. He can talk about his intent. Well, I intended to be retired when I was 70 years old. Well, I'm 70 years old and I'm still busting my ass out there trying to make a living. And everything, like Leroy said, everything you do doesn't pay off. Well, I've got family members that have bought property better than that piece that he's got, and they're losing their shirt on it. So, you think I feel sorry for this guy? I mean, he's not the only guy in this state that's losing his shirt from making a poor choice. So, I wasn't even going to say anything, but when he calls me up or says that I'm threatening him, I don't even know who this yahoo is.
Thank you, Mr. Ciscornia. Okay, anyone else wishing to make a comment on this project? Joe?
I am Steve Fairchild here in the Recreation Corporation, Moaning Cavern, et cetera. Just as a broader view, these discussions are going on worldwide throughout Europe and so forth. You've got the conflict between sewage and water. And because it's throughout the United States, everywhere, lots of technology, lots of development has gone on to address these things. One of which is waterless toilets and recycling. I noticed the man said he could recycle gray water, I presume, into irrigation water. And for limiting use of land 40 acres or less without septic tanks and so on. I think we need to keep the door open for new technology, because there are very aesthetically pleasing, high-tech, inexpensive ways of dealing with human waste and other things that are so. I suggest that we leave that door open and not just say 40 acres minimum, can't go there without public water and public sewage, because public water and public sewage isn't the most efficient way to go in many, many cases. In Colorado, there are entire communities built on the sides of hills who have no water, no sewer, and they work just fine because they have all this technology, and it's getting better and better every day. So please keep that in mind.
Thank you, Mr. Fairchild. Mr. Kelly?
Thank you. Joe Kelly. 4 issues here that I see, and I've heard different people talk about it, and you all know about it. One of them is your Board of Supervisors policy, which created a selective moratorium. Perhaps you should go back and readdress that. The general plan map shows future zoning. It shows it all over in this county on unclassified and possibly agriculture and A1 properties, because I've seen it. I own some of it. PRC 4291, the fire. New construction after 1991 requires, these folks would be required to at least go in and put an 18-foot wide, 2 9-foot lanes, and all the other things involved in 4291 to include trimming any canopies, trimming trees up, setting back, and around their house doing a 100-foot setback. Now, the state has asked me, have you asked your Board of Supervisors what the word shall means? And when shall becomes a government restriction of land? Because state, all the way up to the Assistant Chief Fire Marshal, will not answer it. Assemblyman Berryhill will not answer it. Senator Cogbill will not answer it. Will you folks? I'd like to hear an answer. And I think here locally, when we, the people that come in and go to our county planning department and look for information, and we're given certain things, and believe me, I've read just about everything in this county, and I have missed a few because of the way certain zoning has gone on in the past in this county. Now, we have another issue here. One gentleman brought up about his ability, he was worried about his access, his deeded access. Well, we had a legal access issue here a while back, and now it's gone by the wayside, never finished. Yet under the color of authority of one of the members of the Board of Supervisors, it seems that he wanted to address to 2 members of our board an issue of agriculture. I don't know why he couldn't come before the whole board. or the committee, I should say. Road mitigation fees. What are the purpose of the road mitigation fees then for Pool Station Road? When I did a project or was concerned about a project, I contacted the two former directors, Mr. McSorley, and was told that Pool Station Road was somewhat, and I'm going to use the term priority, for the county to be made to a better level, a service level that would meet the construction needs. Then you have Assessor's Handbook 521. Now this is a document passed by the Board of Equalization California, and it states, ag is an interim zone for the highest and best use. Now the highest and best use, that's what people are taxed on unless they have the Williamson Act on their property. The highest and best use is residential, commercial, and recreation. Take that, folks, and give it a lot of thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Killing.
Yeah, good morning. My name's Jim Waters. My family was involved in the proposed subdivision that's out on Pool Station Road. When my family divided the property, I'm property owner across on the other side of Pool Station, be on the east side. I also have property farther down where my dad's house was. In about 1970, when Leroy and Sandy Rader decided to build a house up on top mountain up there, they came to my dad and got a deeded easement to go through our property. At the time, the property was in the Waters family name. So Leroy has been working on this road forever. My dad gave him an easement to go through there. I drove up that road many, many, many times before the new construction started on the newer road now that's in progress. I found nothing that was wrong with that road. There were culverts. There were cement abutments to handle the water. The road was in excellent shape. I mean, Leroy kept it good. And as far as the access to the parcels in question, number one is the new owners that were now, that is one family. Number two, the Tosconi family is number two, and the Rader family, Onito family is number three. So there actually is three families involved there. My parcel is across the street. I own farther down to the north. And so as far as the, I guess you could say that the ball of wax started when the property was split up in my family. But as far as the roads, the way the road was, the road was in 1970, and from there on he's been working on this road. So now it's basically like a freeway going up through there. So anyway, I just wanted to voice my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. Anyone else wishing to address the board on this item? Jessica? If you make it real quick.
Not if it's in a personal attack.
I just want to say something quick. I'd like to speak to Mr. Waters. When his family listed the property on MLS, it was listed as a possible subdivision. So his family listed it that way. It wasn't like we just pulled it out of a hat. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wishing to address the board? Okay, we have one last chance. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. That kind of sounded like a dud. There we go. Yeah. I would like to ask the board members if they have any comments or questions.
Yes, I do. I'd like some clarification, please. The property zone 10 acres.
That's correct.
And with the general plan land use designation of future single family of 5 acres.
That's correct.
Is the key issue, the road being upgraded?
There are two issues. The issue before the board right now is whether or not you intend to enforce your recommended policy to keep the parcels to 40 acres or greater without water and sewer until after the general plan update is in place.
If that was not the issue, is the issue the road?
The road would then also be an issue, yes.
I want to take a moment and I know this is Supervisor Tuffanelli's area, but I think I need to speak on this before he does. John Buckley was correct that the policy that the board put in November of '07 needs to be consistent and fairly applied, and that this application should be denied. The board, realizing we had probably 4 to 6 cases that might have come in prior to the November '07 decision by the board, would be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. What we're talking about in this case is timing. I'm not saying that the county doesn't have some culpability or the applicant doesn't have culpability, but I will say that the county knew of this project before November '07. I met with the applicant in the spring or summer of '07. I don't think they liked what I said. They met with Supervisor Claudino. I believe Supervisor Claudino said the same thing, and that had to do with the road, and that the road needed to be upgraded as a condition of any split they wanted to do. Now, if the applicant owned the property or didn't at that time, I do not remember. But this is a case on a case-by-case basis. I think in being fair that the county needs to accept the application. That being said, all other conditions would remain the same. The conditions that we have on the road. So to say that we don't want this project is not the issue before us. I mean, we might not want the project, but that's not the point. The point is that was it known prior to November of '07? And I have to say, yes, we did know. We knew of the intent of it. They spoke to, at least 2 of us. And I know 2 of us, Supervisor Claudino and myself, both addressed the road issue. So all I can say is on the issue of should we accept the application, I'm going to support a yes. On the issues that were given to us by the applicant, I guess I would put that back into staff's hands and Supervisor Tuffanelli's hands. I knew there was going to be 5 parcels. Supervisor Claudino knew there were going to be 5 parcels. Staff knew there were going to be 5 parcels. And the applicant knew that the level of service of the road was D, and it would have to be brought up to standard. That's it.
Okay, anyone else wishing to comment?
I have a few comments. Unfortunately, this is the first I've heard that 2 supervisors have met prior.
Separately.
Well, separately. Either way, in '07, in either spring or early summer of '07. Sitting here right now is the first time I've heard of it. I did not know that. However, it is being said that it was brought to their attention that the road needed to be upgraded in order for them to do the subdivision split that they wanted to do. It was brought to their attention. It's been in the general plan since 1996. In order to subdivide to what they're wanting to do, you need to bring the level of service of the road must be a level C. They had no pre-application meeting prior to their submission of their application for their TPM. And they weren't given any direction by the county on what to do prior to their application for a grading permit, or before their application for their TPM. They applied in June, on June 27th, 08, for the TPM. That was well after November 07, when the resolution for 40-acre parcels came into effect. They applied for a grading permit in September of 07, and on that, clearly on their grading permit, it said single-family residence. It did not say that it was going to split into 5 parcels. It did not anywhere indicate that. And I have to recommend, or my opinion is that after hearing that Marita had met with the applicants in early 07, that the county accept their application. But still, I agree with Marita that the level of service of the road has to be taken into consideration, along with the resolution of November 2007 and upgraded again in 2008, remain in effect. And that's what I have to say.
Okay, well, I'll go next. I basically support where Gary is. I think the road improvements need to be made. And I also think the applicant needs to meet the intent of Resolution 07-242 adopted by the board on November 27th of 2007. So I guess that would be basically a denial of the applicant's request.
Can I make a comment to Supervisor Triumph?
Certainly.
If we accept their application, Tom, that we all knew about it prior to November of 07, then that criteria would not apply. If we're saying that we're not going to accept that application, then that criteria applies. That's the key issue before us.
Well, I think there's substantive evidence in the staff report that no representations were made prior to November 27th of 07 to make a county commitment to the applicant to process the application. I mean, somebody can always submit an application. I mean, you don't have to have a motion to accept an application. Somebody can submit an application. The question is, what criteria does it get reviewed against? Clearly, I think we're all in agreement. One of the criteria is it does need to meet of the requirements of the road ordinance for a parcel split, which means that everything has to be at a sea level. For myself, I also think the criteria it needs to be reviewed against is the Resolution 07-242. That's my own opinion.
As for me, I actually think that the record seems quite mixed on the question of when this would, what date people oughta, shoulda known what. But we do have official documents that say there's a date of application, and we have official documents that say that there was a resolution put in place that helps guide us in terms of how we would accept and review applications in relation to that. This is clearly a proposal that came in well after we had established that resolution. The resolution came into play for a variety of reasons. It's supported by this board because we had been under the previous general plan developing subdivisions all over the place, small ones, but they were having a huge impact on some of the underlying fundamentals of rural life, including the well-being of our ag community and the significant economic and I should say even more important is the contribution to the quality of rural life that we often talk about, but sometimes find policy exemptions to get around. I think this is more clear than a lot of what led up to it, but I'd like to add one other thing. I'm not interested in saying, okay, we'll accept an application that's dead on arrival. I don't think that does anybody any favors. In fact, we have 5-year processes that show quite the contrary before us not too long from now. So my view is that we should not accept this. I will vote against that because I don't think this, well, let me just put it in a more positive way. I think the staff has appropriately made its recommendations, and I support those recommendations.
Okay, any other comments on this? Okay, I would like to clarify one particular thing. Is Robert Packinger still in the audience? Mr. Packinger, could you come up and answer a question, please? This particular issue, I don't think is going to have a great bearing on the outcome of this vote here, but Mr. Kelly brought up the significance of Fire Code 4291 as it pertains to the improvement standards of a road going to a single-family residence, and I'm going to put this to you in a kind of a hypothetical way. Say, for instance, Mr. Rader has a 20-acre parcel, and he had this road that he put in 1970, the access road. If he wanted to apply for an accessory dwelling, which he would be permitted to do that in our county code, to put an accessory dwelling on that 20-acre parcel, would he or would he not have been compelled to bring the road up to 4291 standards in order to build that accessory dwelling?
That's, you're asking there the definition of a driveway versus the roadway.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I don't remember exactly where that driveway is. My recollection is that the driveway serves one dwelling.
Well, in this case, it would be serving two.
It would be serving two dwellings, but on a single
three.
parcel. It would be serving still a single parcel.
Well,
it would have two dwellings on one parcel. I believe that the driveway standard would apply in that case. Let's see, do you remember that? No? But if it were serving more than one parcel, it would have to be a road.
Okay, well, there were, in this particular instance, there would be the parcel or the dwelling that was being applied for, the single dwelling that was shown on the application for the driveway that Mr. Barksdale presented. Anyway, I'm just trying to point out to people that we have new standards in place now that we, if you're serving two houses or more on one of these, call it a driveway, that it would trigger significant improvements on the access to those parcels. So this suggestion that this is evidence of some sort of evidence of ulterior motives or subterfuge, in my mind, doesn't apply, and I just wanted to clarify that. So anyway, thank you very much. Okay. I think that I heard the implication of a motion, or implied motion.
I move we accept the application under the guidelines that Maria and I talked about earlier, with still having to conform to the level service C road and 40-acre minimums.
I can't hear you.
Resolution.
State that, I have a hard time hearing. Can you state that?
Accepting the application with the guidelines of the level service road.
C for pool station.
C for pool station.
Excuse me. I think I need to give a little bit of clarification to some of the discussion that's going on.
If you'd like, that would be wonderful.
There were a couple of things that were brought up. First of all, there was a mention by the chair that this was basically a 20-acre split with clustering, and I do need to clarify that this is not a density transfer and that this project could later be divided into an entire subdivision. There is no restriction on the remaining parcel not being divided. So that is the first clarification. Secondly, based on the direction that we received, that staff received from Mr. Selman in 2008, the question before the board for the exemption was not just that the applicant knew of the project, of the resolution, but that they had expended considerable time and expense at direction of staff, and this was what delayed their application after the date that the resolution was passed. And third, the staff should be aware that because of the conflict of the existing project with the level of service D, that should the project application be accepted as complete, the first step for staff would be to recommend that the project be brought forward to the Planning Commission and the board for denial based on the fact that it is not consistent with the general plan. So just as an informational prior to your decision, I thought this information should be put before you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I withdraw that motion and move that we accept the application based on the information that I've received this morning, that the two supervisors were informed prior to the summer of 2007 of the intent of the application, of the applicant. So I move that we accept the application, but still have the restrictions of a level service C road, the pull station road must be.
Just a clarification, Gary. You did not include Resolution 07242, do you?
No, I can't.
Can't, Tom. We either accept the application
Application.
prior to that resolution or we don't.
But the level service C still stands.
Can I clarify? The question after all the testimony is pretty basic. Are you going to allow the project to proceed as it's been proposed past resolution and whatever it is, 07242? In other words, do you want it to be processed? That's really the only question here.
That's all that's before us. We're no entitlements, no...
Right. If you in fact say, no, you don't want to because you believe it's contrary to that resolution, then the project's dead. If you say you wanted to process it and find it to be in compliance with that resolution, then it will be processed. What Shailen's telling you is the next step will be a recommendation to the Planning Commission for denial because of the level of service on the road. It's a two-step process.
Well, if I...
That's legal.
Myself, I mean, if the board's going to say accept it, so that staff has to process it and put a lot of staff time into it to recommend denial because it's inconsistent with the general plan, you know, I mean, we already have a planning department that's totally overwhelmed. I don't see the point in giving that direction. Even if you're not going to apply the resolution, as I think we should, if you just want to apply the road standard, which goes back to '96 and clearly was in place prior to the purchase of the property, just to say process it for a recommendation of denial because it's inconsistent with the general plan, I don't know how we're doing staff a favor or the applicant a favor at that point.
Well, it would put it in his lap whether he wants to withdraw it or proceed with it. We can't tell him we can't accept your application with the restrictions that we're putting forward. It's up to him whether he wants to proceed on it or not.
Well, then I would look to
I
county
mean,
council.
we're coming
So we
straight
have
out
to-
saying under the motion that he will accept his application, but the road is still a problem. And if you want it to, if you want it to proceed, or if you want it to go through as it proceeds through, then you're gonna have to bring the level of service of the road up to level C.
Okay, we have a motion to that effect. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the application with the proviso that it does have to comply.
No,
with,
no proviso.
Well, the
Accept the application.
okay.
That's all we're going to do.
I thought
We
I-
either accept it or we don't accept it. That's all that's before us.
Okay.
That's not the motion before us.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Wait a
There's
minute.
already a motion on the floor, point of order, please.
Can we just hold it a second? As I understand it, Supervisor Toffanelli said that he wants to accept the application, but firmly stating that there is no suggestion that we waive the level of C criteria for the road. That was previously embedded, it still is embedded in the general plan. So, is that not the question, or the motion that you seconded?
Let me clarify. As I see it, the only issue before us is whether to accept or not accept the application. If we accept it, then everything else goes in the standard procedure, which means the roads and...
For purposes of moving you along,
Yes.
we understand Gary's motion.
Okay.
Which
Thank
is,
you.
which as a practical matter is says process it.
Because
Thank you.
it means just the process. Thank you.
Okay, does the second still stand, Maria?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. May I hear all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, we have 3 ayes and 2 noes, so the motion passes. Okay, that,
Did you vote with us?
yes.
Oh, good.
This is the first time I voted with Marita in a year, so that she was shocked. Okay, Supervisor Toffanelli, did you have a comment? Did you have a comment? Okay. All right. Gosh, that was really quick, wasn't it?
Can we, Supervisor, or Chair, can
Yes.
we take a 5-minute break?
Yes, I am going to recommend that we take a 5-minute break. However, I have a couple of announcements that I want to make here. Please keep it quiet just for a moment, please. All right, the next item that we have is item number 5. No, this is item number 6. This is, of course, on the Trinitas thing. I've got about 27, list of 27 names that want to talk on this thing. I would like to see a show of hands, and I'm not going to ask for attorneys or experts, hydrologists or whatever, but could I see a show of hands of people that want to talk so I can kind of get a sense for how many people? Okay, help me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We were told what?
For this next one.
Okay, yeah, that's a separate issue. Okay, I'm seeing at least 40 people. I'd like to have your hands go down. How many people would like to see this hearing concluded today? How many people would like to not care whether it is concluded today? Okay, democratically, I think we're going to conclude today. Okay, having said that, I had put out at least 100 emails responding to emails that I got prior to this hearing that I was going to make this determination based on the amount of people and the time constraints that we have. So I said be prepared for 2 minutes for people that are coming up to make their comments. I've said 3. I said 3. However, we cannot take, we have 40 people each speaking 3 minutes. That's 2 hours of testimony. We cannot endure that today. I'm going to hold a 2-minute limitation. Okay, a 2-minute limitation on the thing. And please be clear on this. This is new information. If somebody comes up and says something about water, if somebody comes up and immediately says the same thing about water or the absence of water, the chair has the discretion of saying, we've heard that, we want new information, we don't want old information with a new person. Does everybody understand that? Okay, we will take a 5-minute break and reconvene. Attention, please. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Can supervisors please return to the front of the room?
I think it's fine. That's good. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah. Brent, is Christine Poe still here? Okay. What was the decision on lunches for the board? 12:30? Okay. All right, if I could have your attention, please. Prior to the break, I was making an announcement that we'd be limiting people to 2 minutes. I'm going to kind of retrace my steps on that. I had previously announced that it would be 3, so we'll stay with 3 minutes for individual comments. We will, however, any designated organization that has been involved in this process, whether it's CSIRC, a coalition, Keep It Rural Calaveras, they will be given a 15-minute aggregate time. So if you come up and you identify yourself as a part of that organization, you can talk for 3 minutes or 15 minutes. But that's what's going to happen. So if that rule is not going to work, then I apologize. All right. The other thing I'd like to clarify is that we have all these cards here. Some people got cards, some people did not. It was not my intention to have cards. We have a sign-up sheet over here next to Mr. Harrington. There's been people that have been standing up along this wall over here on the east side of the building. I would expect that anybody who wishes to talk would observe whether there's a significant line over there. When there's 2 or 3 people left in the line, come up and we'll get to you as quickly as possible. But I'm looking at about close to 40 cards here, and anyway, the way we're going to start off the sequence of events here is we will have a brief staff report. We'll have the applicant's attorney giving up to 25 minutes for his comments. We have rebuttal attorneys also given up to 25 minutes for their comments. And then I expect that I'll be opening up for expert witnesses. The definition of experts will be people that are credentialed or licensed in their particular disciplines. They will have no particular order for or against. We'll have, and then I want to also make it clear that we are going to be taking a lunch break so that the board and others can have lunch at about 12:30. We have no intent to work through lunch like we frequently do. We'll be coming back after that for just a half-hour lunch break, and then my guess is that we'll be launching into the 30 or 40 speakers that wish to speak. Mr. Connolly will be able to do a recap of whatever points he wants to bring up after those speakers, and Mr. Abbott will be finishing up. I have no idea how long that's going to take. Hopefully we can get it done, but if we don't, so be it. We of course then the concluding portion of the session today will be questions from the board and concluding comments from the board, and a motion, hopefully. Okay. This is not looking good to me to have people sign or lining up here. Well, okay, let me clarify this again. I would like to see no more than about, I don't know, 3 or 4 people up against the wall over here. It is very distracting for the board and to the presenters to have a tribe of people at the planning department's desk. Okay. All right. Can we begin with the staff's comments on this item, please? Mr. Rusk. That's correct. Yeah, if that's, Mr. Rusk is quite correct. If we have, in my position here, for instance, June Jones has already signed in. She need not come up and sign in again. She can just come up and identify herself as June Jones. Okay, I heard a cell phone a moment ago. Could we please make sure that all cell phones are turned off? And another thing that I neglected to mention this morning is this parking lot over here on the side. We occasionally have had the owner of that property come in and stop our proceedings to tell us to get cars off of that parking lot. So I would suggest that if anybody has your car over there, take this opportunity to go move it down to below, please. Okay, Shaylin or whoever is going to fill us in on this, please.
Okay, as it was noted by Chairman Thomas, this is an application by Mike and Michelle Nemi for a zoning amendment from agricultural preserve to recreation, a tentative subdivision tract map to divide approximately 280 acres into 14 separate parcels, a conditional use permit for construction of a lodge, restaurant, parking lots, and continued commercial agricultural activities, and an administrative use permit for 24 annual events with an attendance of up to 500 people and an annual event with an attendance of up to 999 people. The environmental impact report has been prepared for this project and found that implementation of the project would result in a number of significant and unavoidable impacts. That EIR is before the board at this time for consideration, and staff believes it to be consistent with the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, that it provides sufficient information for the board to make an informed decision concerning the potential project impacts, identifies mitigation that would reduce these impacts to the greatest extent feasible, and that it accurately reflects the county's independent judgment and analysis. Staff requests that the board approve certification of the EIR for this project. For information, the EIR is an informational document. Its primary purpose is to provide the sufficient information and analysis for decision makers to make an informed decision. It does not have to be perfect, and it does not have to address every option or position. It can find that there are project impacts that are significant and unavoidable. It is not required to avoid or mitigate all impacts to a less than significant level. This is a requirement of a mitigated negative declaration, but under CEQA, an EIR is only required to mitigate to the greatest extent feasible. Although it identifies alternatives to a project, it cannot impose an alternative in lieu of the original project. Certification of the EIR and approval or denial of any part of the proposed project are two separate actions. The board can approve certification of the EIR without approving any part of the project. However, the reverse is not true. The board cannot approve any part of the project without certifying the EIR, although it can deny the entire project and deny certification of the EIR. Statements of overriding consideration are not included in the EIR and are not part of the EIR certification process. They are only required after an EIR is certified in order to approve a project that has been found to have significant impacts. When a proposed project would result in significant and unavoidable impacts, CEQA requires the board to balance the potential economic, legal, social, technological, and other benefits of a proposed project against its significant and unavoidable impacts when deciding whether to approve the project. Although the social and economic aspects of a project are not generally considered under CEQA, they may be considered when deciding the merits of project approval. If the board decides the benefits outweigh the impacts, their decision must be supported by substantial evidence in the record and a statement of overriding consideration explaining why the potential impacts would be considered acceptable by the board must be prepared to justify that decision. Finally, the mitigation measures contained in the final EIR and recommended conditions of approval were developed to address the impacts of the entire project. Depending on the intent of the board, it may be necessary to delete or revise certain mitigation measures or conditions of approval to match the actual scope of project approval. The board can add conditions of approval at its discretion. It may also make changes to the recommended mitigation measures or substitute mitigation measures. However, if these changes result in an increased or new impact, the EIR may need to be recirculated before the board can take further action on that EIR or on the project. I've received a number of questions about the effects of rezoning the subject parcel to rec. What would be allowed with that zoning versus what is currently allowed on that property under an AP or an A1 zoning designation. The two existing parcels are currently zoned agricultural preserve, which reflects their previous status under the Williamson Act contract. Because those contracts have expired, both parcels would be rezoned general agriculture if the rec zoning request is not approved. The county has a right to farm ordinance which is designed to protect against infringement by encroaching residential or other non-agricultural development on adjoining parcels and land in the general vicinity. The right to farm is supposed to take precedence over all other adjoining and nearby land uses. In addition, residential uses are placed in a position of secondary importance in the A1 zone when compared to the commercial scale production of food and fiber. Most uses permitted in an A1 or general ag zoning district are directly related to agricultural operations, but not all. The exceptions are generally those that would not obstruct or can peacefully coexist with the intent of the right to farm ordinance, and include such things as field rock extraction, rural home business, equestrian facilities, hunting or game bird clubs with some restrictions, private special events of varying sizes and frequencies with 75 to 999 participants, medical services, veterinary clinics, heliports, and public safety facilities. A larger number of non-agricultural uses would be allowed with a conditional use permit, but the county does not currently allow a public or private golf course in either the AP or A1 zoning district. In this context, private is intended to mean use of the land or facilities for a fee for private meetings, gatherings, and events that are not open to the general public, not personal or family use. Public events require an administrative or conditional permit. If the rec zoning is denied, the applicants could still pursue some, if not all, of the objectives of the proposed project. They could continue the cultivation of their olive orchard and development of their olive oil business. They could have special private events on their land, up to 12 events per year with up to 999 people per event without any administrative or conditional use permit, provided they had adequate parking and traffic controls in place during the event. They could expand that to 24 events as requested in their current proposal with just an administrative use permit. They could conduct agricultural product sales with a tasting room, agricultural or environmental education center, educational and interpretive seminars, clinics or walks, agritourism activities for groups of 75 or less, and other types of rural recreation. They could also provide an agricultural homestay facility. If the zoning amendment to a rec zone is approved, the types of permitted uses will change dramatically. Some, such as hunting and fishing, are also allowed in the ag zone. Most, however, are not. Permitted uses in a rec zone include the golf course, driving range, pro shop, concession stand, and health club, all requested by the applicant in some form. County code does not define or place development restrictions such as size, number, or design on any of these facilities, other than regular development or performance standards. In addition, picnic areas, playgrounds, horseback riding, hiking and riding trails, fishing and hunting are all consistent with a rec area and are permitted uses, as are tennis, swimming, and racquetball. Water sports and facilities are also allowed, but do not really apply to this particular project site. Residences are allowed in a rec zone. Timeshares of up to 3 units for every 5 acres can be built on well and septic, and up to 6 units per acre if public water becomes available. Single-family residences, 1 for every 20 acres, are also permitted under the current general plan designation. These houses, however, would not be on separate parcels and could not be sold with the land. They could, however, be used as long-term or transient rental properties. There is no mention of a clubhouse in the rec zoning district, and the definition of a recreation center in the county code restricts that type of facility to a location within a common area for the use of project residents or property owners. Unless the tentative subdivision tract map is approved, there would be no justification for common area or a recreation center as part of this project. A retreat facility is also permitted in the rec zone. This facility would be used primarily by an organization for employee or member transient occupancy. It could provide overnight accommodations, meal facilities, and other facilities for study, education, or worship, and may be used by an organization or a group's membership and guests. Finally, ambulance services are allowed in the rec zone, as are accepted farming practices, although commercial farming activities require a conditional use permit. I hope this answers some of the questions regarding the options within the zoning district, and if the board has any additional questions, I'm ready to take them.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, may we please hear from the applicant's attorney?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bill Abbott, 2100 21st Street, Sacramento, for the applicant. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been a long, arduous experience for the supervisors, the staff, and the applicant to get to this point. We have just a couple of boards we'd like to use as part of our presentation. Those will be set up, but I'm going to continue. I think the big picture question for the board to consider is what type of land uses do you want to encourage in the county? What kind of legacy do you want to create? And I think this project represents an opportunity for a clean enterprise. It's a destination recreational opportunity that will bring people into the county. And as we provided information as part of the packet submitted on Friday, there is a synergistic benefit from creating a destination type resort. The other golf courses will benefit, and once people are here for 2 days or 3 days, they're spending money in your shops, they're spending money in your hotels, and they're spending money in your restaurants. And I think the question for the county is, obviously you don't want to build an entire county based upon one type of land use, but in terms of a complementary land use that works with other commercial and the long-term vision for the county, I think a destination recreational facility like this does fit with what I understand to be the county's vision. In terms of the presentation, my presentation, I'm going to touch upon probably about 5 highlights in terms of major themes. The first is the question of general plan consistency. And your environmental impact report, which is recommended for certification, does contain an analysis of consistency with the general plan. We have built upon that. But I think before touching on those individual points, I just want to make the passing comment on what is the legal standard for general plan consistency. And inevitably, proponents and opponents will find some portion of the general plan that supports their vision for the project. And you're going to hear different visions and different interpretations of the county's general plan. But the court applies a deferential standard. And I think at the end of the day, if the board concludes that this project is consistent with the general plan, that's a decision that will be sustained by the court, even though you may hear contrary interpretations. So first of all, and I'm not going to restate what we've previously submitted, but I do want to highlight just a couple of points. Your own general plan, goal 1-3, improve the economy of Calaveras County. All right, this is a project that stands to bring new revenues and new employment opportunities. You have policies 1-3A, encourage job-generating commercial. We think we were consistent with that. Work cooperatively with the Chamber of Commerce. I think you're going to hear from the Chamber of Commerce, who also shares our vision that this is a good commercial land use for the county. Policy Roman 2-2A, allow clustering of single-family lots. This land use plan does cluster those lots. The open space is the orchard and the golf course facility. We meet the density limitations in the general plan through the clustering strategy. You also have implementation measures, retain open space. Well, that's what the golf course serves as. Goal 2-8, provide for the integration of residential and non-residential. Goal Roman 2-20, provide for the development of recreation-oriented commercial uses. Recreation-oriented commercial uses, which are necessarily tied to the location of recreation resources. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, this was a comment that was made to me a number of years ago by the developer of the Saddle Creek project. Now, Saddle Creek, I think many people, I'm sure there's a full range of opinions, but generally, Saddle Creek is considered to be a top-flight golf course commercial residential development. But the original developer on that site, before he picked that site, had spent a number of years surveying the foothills. And it's an issue of interest to me because I work essentially from Madera County up to Lassen County. So we work on the western slope of the Sierra. And the comment that was made back in the mid-'90s about working in Calaveras County was the natural lay of the land. And I can tell you, if you compare this site compared to other sites in the foothills, other sites require significantly more grading because they can't make the golf course fit on the site. But what Trinitas does is, because it's at the lower end of the western range, has a natural lie. And that site, I mean, that's a perfect example of design with nature, of trying to make the use of the land in its natural condition without completely restructuring it. And the further you go up in the foothills and you want to develop a golf course project, the D9s will be out there and they will be moving dirt from one end to the other. 2 million, 3 million, 4 million cubic yards of dirt. That's not exactly designed with nature. But this course fits the site and fits like a glove. Recreation. Your general plan provides that recreation may be consistent in any natural resource lands classification. So your existing policy permits this type of recreational development in your land use, in this type of land use district. Goal 2-24, provide for environmentally acceptable disposal of solid and septic waste. As the EIR documents and the staff report documents, there's a treatment plant that's proposed for this project. It will be subject to county regulation, may be subject to state regulation. We're not reinventing the wheel. It's an existing technology and can accommodate the project in conformance with your general plan. The project meets your access requirements stated in your general plan. Your general plan requires that the on-site roads be built to county standards, which is one of your conditions of approval in your staff packet. Provide and maintain a state highway system with capacity to serve projected state highway capacity. If you read the conditions of approval and mitigation measures, which we'll talk about because we don't share the same interpretation, but there is accommodation for impacts to state facilities. Plus, of course, the project will pay the impact fees that are set by the county. Your general plan calls for measures to maintain or improve levels of service. You have detailed conditions of approval and mitigation measures that are contained in your staff packet. You have a requirement, for legal access, goal 3-8 of your general plan, and the project meets all these standards. The project doesn't require any variances from your development standards. You have a goal that calls for preserving and encouraging the use of land for agricultural purposes. I mean, the Nemes, I think, have a reputation in this county. They've restored, essentially, I believe, the oldest olive orchard in this community. They are actively planting on the adjacent acreage. They're active in Calaveras grown. So there's nothing incompatible with a commercial project that is part of a larger agricultural endeavor. Preserve and enhance the county's significant wildlife and botanical habitats, as we've already set forth both in the Planning Commission packet and your packet. This site has already received the first level of Audubon certification, once by Audubon International. They have a program which is designed to make courses more environmentally compatible. Not many courses have that recognition. This course has that first level. You get to the next levels once the course goes into production and into active operation, and those are additional certifications that are available. But it's reflective of the vision behind the Trinitas site. Goal V-4, preserve or allow recovery of significant archaeological sites. This site was redesigned to accommodate and protect existing on-site archaeological resources. You have additional mitigation measures that are proposed, again, fully consistent with your general plan. And we can go on at some length, but to move through the number of topics today, the bottom line is the legal standard is, does the project promote your overall general plan vision? It's not going to be consistent with every goal and policy. No project ever will, and the law doesn't require it. The law recognizes, and the courts look for a degree of overall commitment. So when you're hearing the testimony today on issues of consistency, I ask you to take into consideration the points of consistency that are already identified in your environmental impact report, plus the points that we've discussed today and already submitted in writing. The next major issue has to do with water supply. And if I can approach the board over here on the right, this is already in your packet. Two numbers I'd like you to keep in mind. 310,000 gallons per day and 310,000, 245,000, and 25,000. Now, the first number comes from your EIR. Your consultants estimated the amount of water usage for this project on an annual average of 310,000 gallons per day. And they based that upon averages in the industry, local climatic conditions, and the amount of irrigated turf. And the EIR consultant concludes, even though they do agree with a number of observations by our consultant, but the geocon analysis says, we think you should not go beyond the 310,000 gallons per day, and therefore, from an environmental perspective, this project should be limited to the golf course only. And that recommendation is wedded to the 310,000 number. So we came back at the Planning Commission and we said, well, in 2008, and this evidence is all in the record, in 2008, even though precipitation in this part of the county was only 60% of normal, so it was a dry year. If there's a year in which elevated water use is going to occur, it would have occurred in 2008. Actual water use of the project was 245,000 gallons. We have that based upon computerized logs. This course uses computerized technology. It also reduced the amount of irrigated turf. So the actual water use, again, the EIR says don't go below 310,000. The computerized records are actual use is 245,000. So when you take the 245,000 and add in the balance of the project, the residential, the lodge, the clubhouse, the spa, the number you come up with is the number that's on the board, 270,000. We are below the number that is set forth in the recommendation contained in the EIR. So after we provided this information, suddenly the water target moved on us. Staff took the position, well, since you only used 245,000, we're now going to recommend that you be cut to 245,000. But we thought about that further. If GeoCon's recommendation was, first of all, GeoCon could not have made a recommendation based upon actual water use in 2008 because their report was released in, say, September of 2008. So the only year they could have based their analysis, the only year they could have based their recommendation as to the amount of sustained water use was based upon 2007. And we provided you that information. In actuality, in 2007, when this course was greening up, it uses additional water. The actual water use was north of 310,000. So even though water use was in excess of 310,000, the recommendation is at 310,000. The total water use for this project, as documented in your EIR and in the record, is well below what was the safe yield. That's why we believe that there is adequate water to support the entire project without having negative effects. I believe you're going to get testimony from CCWD. I would certainly put weight in their opinion as being the most knowledgeable entity with respect to water in this area. We also have provided the testimony and analysis by our geologist who worked for years and years in this county for East Bay mud, looking at waters, very familiar with this, the water movement in this part of the county. So as to water, we think that there is substantial, credible evidence in the record. There may be contrary opinions, but the bottom line at the end of the day, substantial, credible evidence that the amount of water use is below the number in the EIR, and that this basin can support this project, which draws off the deep aquifer, not the shallow aquifer that is on the that the adjacent wells use, without having adverse impacts. So that's my recap in terms of water. To turn to our request with respect to mitigation measures and conditions of approval, this packet that comes to you has over 70 mitigation measures. It has over 100 conditions of approval. We concur with roughly 95%. We have no comment. Conditions as drafted works. There is, however, we think that there are appropriate comments that need to be made with respect to hydrology. First of all, we think the recommendation at 310,000, which now moved to 245,000, is wrong and is not supported by the record. Secondly, with respect to traffic, there is an issue of nexus. Nexus is the term to describe the relationship of mitigation measures to impacts caused by the project. It comes from the constitutional cases that deal with land use. And the point that we're trying to make here, and we've detailed a number of observations in our comments, it's not that the conditions, it's not that the mitigation measures should be thrown out. That's not our point. Our point is that the mitigation measures need to be fine-tuned to the actual impacts. Now let me give you an example. In the EIR, in the traffic analysis, it concludes that if you had the full project, all the land uses, and you had a major event of 999 visitors, and you were 16 years out from now, so 16 years in the future, all the cumulative increases in traffic and everything else going on, a certain level of mitigation be required. That's appropriate. We don't have a problem with that mitigation measure. But what we do have is the way it's been drafted. It's now been drafted to say before you can open for operations, you have to complete all these traffic impacts. And part of that really, frankly, is the way this project comes forward. It has multiple components to it. We don't know if the board's going to turn it down or approve the whole thing or components of it. And it would be impractical to ask staff to try and draft a set of mitigation requirements with 6 permutations of approvals in front of you. So our request is that if you concur with us that this is an appropriate vision for the county, that staff be directed to fine-tune the mitigation measures and conditions of approval based upon a nexus requirement. We're not asking you to throw those out. We're just asking them to be fine-tuned so this project doesn't have to build a bunch of improvements well in advance of when they're needed. So all we're asking for is that linkage as well as the timing component. Some of these impacts don't occur for another 16 years. The mitigation, the way the conditions are written, we have to build those tomorrow. That doesn't make any sense. That money could be better spent elsewhere or could be spent in a collaborative funding strategy. The 2 mitigation measures where we do draw the line in the sand have to do with agricultural mitigation. One of the recommended mitigation measures calls for a conservation easement on, I believe it's 200 acres of land. This was really driven by, but I believe, staff's analysis of what they think is a violation of the Williamson Act, but it's not a physical impact on the environment. If you look at the California Environmental Quality Act is devoted to impacts on the physical environment. The courts have recognized that you may have a regulatory issue, and that can and should be dealt with in a different context. So if staff really believes that the Williamson Act issue is a violation here, we can deal with that in the context. But just because they believe it's potentially a Williamson Act issue doesn't convert it into an impact for purposes of CEQA. Now let me give you, let me try to translate this into something tangible. Now the backdrop to this issue is that there's a well on adjacent property owned by the Nemes. That well is in Williamson Act. And that well serves the adjacent Williamson Act property. And that well also serves and provides water onto the golf course. So the question is, I'm sorry, I just mixed two issues here. With respect to the conservation easement, let me apologize. That provision was written from, I believe, from a standpoint that the Nemes should not have engaged in the golf course construction when the Williamson Act contracts were in place. And so all that acreage needs to be compensated for through an off-site mitigation strategy. Here's the problem with that argument. First of all, one of the Williamson Act contracts had already expired before any of the grading activity took place. So there was no Williamson Act, no violation of the Williamson Act, no violation of the contract that supports the acreage that was reflected by the contract. It had expired. If you assume that it was a violation of the Williamson Act for purposes of this analysis, there was only 2 years remaining on the second contract. That 2 years of alleged violation has now metamorphosed into a mitigation measure that calls for permanent conservation of additional acreage. There's no nexus between the impact, the violation, and the proposed mitigation measure. If, in fact, you believe that that's a significant impact, and we don't concede that point, we think it's less than significant because the one contract had expired and the second contract only had 2 years remaining. But even if you take the position that it's an impact, the appropriate nexus-based mitigation would be the equivalent number of acreage under a conservation easement for 2 years, which was the balance of the term. There is a disconnect between the mitigation measure and the alleged impact, and we don't concede that for a moment. And I apologize, I was mixing the second argument. The second argument deals with an off-site well. And if I can just hand out this photograph, I think this will help illustrate. And I'm going to go to the board to my right to make the point.
Mr. Abbott, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that you have only about 5 or 6 minutes left. So.
I thought the well was for the olives, not the golf course, on the adjacent property.
And maybe I can speak to that. The water's mixed. Okay? Look at this chart up here. This shows all the surrounding parcels. The blue dots represent wells that are being monitored by CCWD, and maybe they can explain what's going on in terms of their activity. But the dispute that's in question deals with this well right here. This well serves existing olive production on Williamson Act, and then there's an underground pipeline that goes over and pushes and deposits water in a lake outside the Trinity House. I'll leave this here in case you can. What I gave you is a photograph that comes from the EIR. And my point is, what's the physical impact that takes land out of production? What's the physical impact to adjacent Williamson Act property that adversely impacts Williamson Act or agricultural uses to take place on the adjacent property? You're going to look at this photograph and you're going to say, well, Bill, this doesn't tell me anything. Well, that's the point. There is no impact. I would defy anybody to find the pipeline because it is underground. If you want to, I can show you where we think it is based upon this photograph. But the pipeline, the pump is off-site to this photograph. Okay? And it moves to the west, but it's underground. If you look at the photograph, you can't find any element of disruption of agricultural operations on the adjacent property, and that's the basis for the mitigation measure. Now, if this was a surface pipeline where you had to clear the land and you had to take land out of production, I could see the rationale, but there is no rationale to support that mitigation measure. So those are the two that we respectfully disagree with staff. There are a number of conditions of approval. We have we have commented on. We've provided those in writing. We have previously presented those to the planning staff and planning commission. The only one that is that we take exception to is one requirement that requires attendees to wear numbered bracelets. And our point there is that, of course, weddings are an important complementary use when you have a facility such as what's proposed at Trinitas. If you look at Greenhorn, if you look at Saddle Creek, weddings are a very important part of their business. And from a regional perspective, in terms of attract this investment, attract people to come to the county and spend money, you have to ask yourself, what's the practicality of asking somebody who wants to do a wedding party in Calaveras County to say, well, the bride and the groom and the minister or the rabbi or whomever all have to wear numbered wedding bands? It's the kiss of death for that type of use. So we don't have any problem with the number counts. We're open to alternative record-keeping strategies, but we think the requirement of a numbered bracelet really, at the end of the day, works against what we think is the appropriate vision for the site. We've provided you, to head towards the end here, we've provided you with a number of documents that we think document the public benefit associated with the project. This project stands to generate TOT, sales tax, property tax, impact fees. Those are all relative numbers, but we think it gives you a flavor for what the potential is by bringing new business opportunities to the county. It provides employment opportunities, and in this economy, I would invite anybody to come to the microphone and tell you what they propose in terms of new job generation within the county. The NEMIs are ready to stand and deliver on that issue. Public safety, they operate the only publicly accessible fire hydrant in the west end of the county is there. Jenny Lind fire trucks can access that. If this project's approved, a second hydrant's going to go in. CDF comes in and uses their ponds. So having this type of use out there does have some tangible public benefits. We disagree with staff on the question of a golf course as a recreational use. You have information that we've submitted from the Ag Extension Service. I believe you have an email from Ken Churches that supports this type of project as being compatible with ag tourism. So we think it's actually a public course under limited numbers is appropriate under the existing zoning today. Thank you for the opportunity to present the comments. Attached to the photograph is a yellow sheet. It's our requested action. If you concur that this project should go forward, our recommendation in terms of action is that staff be directed to provide supplemental responses to any significant issues that come in either by the testimony or in the written documents presented last week. Direct staff to prepare revised ordinances and resolutions in support of the project, and that's the full project. Revise the mitigation measures and conditions of approval to provide that fine-tuned nexus that we've asked for, which we think is the legal requirement, and to amend those two mitigation measures as previously discussed. Close the public hearing except as to any supplemental analysis and recommendations as prepared by staff, and to bring this back at a later meeting, which I would guess probably would be in May, but it's at the board's discretion. So thank you for the opportunity. We are happy to answer any questions. We have a number of people here who can respond to technical questions you have regarding water or golf course operation. And thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. I think that you may have some questions here.
Mr. Abbott? Is the Audubon International Cooperative Sanctuary part of the Audubon Society? I mean...
Yes, I mean, I know the intricacies. I know if you go to Audubon International, go to their website, there's a direct link. So it's a service that they provide, recognizing that golf courses have the potential to create environmental amenities. So
I did go to their website. It was part of a golf association, not part of the Audubon Society. So because I wasn't clear, I had never heard of them before, so I just think that needs to be clarified.
Okay.
On your comment about the nexus for the roads, the traffic, I want to be clear what you're asking.
We're not asking that the mitigation measures be thrown out.
No, you're asking that they be fine-tuned.
Correct. So that...
I understand that, but I'm not clear what you're asking to have fine-tuned. To have 12,000 rounds of golf, part of Hospital and Southworth, I think, need to be done. The intersections don't. If they want to increase the rounds, the intersections at the two ends. But so I guess I'm asking for clarification on what you're asking to have fine-tuned. And
well,
there was some paperwork submitted, and I haven't seen that.
No, it's fine. And what that paperwork illustrates is that the way that the conditions currently are written, and of course, as I pointed out earlier, part of the challenge perhaps for staff can speak to this obviously with more authority than I, is that, is the board going to, deny the project, approve golf course only, golf course plus res plus, I mean, there's about 6 permutations. And so staff didn't fine-tune a set of conditions for each of those fact patterns. And that makes sense. They would still be writing the staff report today if they had to do all that. So my point is that if the board has a vision for this project, then we would ask that you direct staff to adjust the mitigation measures to fit the actual level of a project. So if you approve the full project, it's not going to get built overnight. It's going to get built over time, and the mitigation requirements need to be linked to whatever component of the project is coming next. And whether it's 12,000 rounds or 36 rounds, or whether it's 36 rounds plus the residential, those are all fine-tuned adjustments. And that's all that we're asking, is that we're not saying that you need to throw out your traffic analysis. The mitigation measures and conditions were frankly oversimplified. They suggest that they have to mitigate for impacts not associated with the 12,000 rounds. That's wrong. But I mean, that's a technical exercise that can be done over the next month if you think that, and they may disagree at the end of the day. They may think that there's nexus support. Let me give you an example. Wimmer Road, south in San Joaquin County. All right? Draft EIR didn't identify it as a potentially significant impact, so there's no mitigation measure. San Joaquin County submits a letter that says we want full improvements headed south. At the Planning Commission, the staff report says there's no nexus to support this. The recommendation to you today is for my client to build those improvements off-site in the next county. And my point is, where's the nexus? Where's the impact? That needs to be cleaned up, but that can be cleaned up as part of a final action of the board. So, I mean, it would take several hours probably to go through each of those permutations on traffic.
I just wasn't clear when you say tweaking it. That wasn't your term. What it was you were asking.
We're not asking that they be thrown out, only that they be linked to the actual level of project as it goes forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No?
I actually have one.
Supervisor Walensky, please go ahead.
We had on our desk here this morning 2 revisions to section 3.7-2A and 2B that involve the testing and water issues in general. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Okay, and do you have any comments on that?
Well, we don't have any problem with the revisions to the testing language. Our problem is with the difference between the 310, the 245, and the 270. So those are fine revisions. We're happy to work with staff on those.
Yes, Supervisor Toffanelli, go ahead.
Mr. Abbott, can you clarify for me the size of the second lot that was still under Williamson Act when you said that the mitigation measure called for the whole 200 acres? For the 2 lots, 1 lot,
120. Mr. Nemes advised me it's 120 acres for the piece that still had 2 years remaining under the Williamson Act contract.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes questions from Mr. Abbott. Thank you very much. All right. On the sequence of events here, I would like to hear from Mr. Conley.
Mark Conley, 121 East 11th Street, Tracy, on behalf of KIRC. First of all, I want to go back over a little bit of history. When this project first came up, there were great inconsistencies in the description of the project as contained in the EIR. First of all, for example, if all the projections were true about what this project was going to do, Calaveras County would be a rich county in terms of tax revenue right now because you have golf courses already. So the question became, is the golf course really 12,000 rounds per year? Are they really going to generate $200 to $500 worth of additional revenues? Are they really going to be able to sell rounds of golf for $125 per round? Is this a financially feasible project? Because if those assumptions aren't true, then none of the benefits of this project are going to happen. I do disagree with counsel for Mr. Nemi in one important respect. The test before you today is not ultimately going to be whether or not this is your vision for this particular project, whether you want this kind of project in the county. I agree with your staff that the ultimate test you're going to have to apply today is whether there are overriding considerations which outweigh the significant environmental impacts of the project. And that assumes that you certify the environmental impact report, of which there's a dispute, and you reach that test. That's the test before you today. Are you going to be able to find that location of this intense resort in an agricultural area, which severely impacts the surrounding agricultural operations, which has the equivalent impact of locating almost 1,800 homes on well water in an agricultural area in terms of water consumption, outweighs are outweighed by some benefits of the project. And so we went into analyzing what is really happening with the project. And that's the ultimate test you have to happen today. One other thing I want to address before I introduce Mr. Allman, who's an economist who's going to provide you with specific information, is you're hearing conflicting things from the applicant, and you're going to hear it throughout. On one hand, he says there's these great benefits based on mitigation which is required by the EIR, but yet he stands up here and tells you we're not going to do anything that isn't specifically tied to the impacts of this project. Its code term, the legal term is nexus. We're not going to do any roadway improvements other than those that you can demonstrate are impacts that are caused by this project, and we have to do them. So there's no benefit, for example, for traffic if all the applicant is going to do is make his fair share contribution for some future improvement that is going to possibly happen when the golf course opens tomorrow. There's no benefit, for example, to water impacts if the applicant is pulling off of well water, but the only benefit that he is going to provide the county is to make up for the impacts that he causes. So you're being given conflicting positions here by the applicant. I have this great benefit, but on the other hand, we're not doing anything more than we need to do. Those are issues that you've got to resolve, those inconsistencies. Let me go back to the inconsistencies with the project that I talked about briefly. There has been no expert presented by the applicant, other than the opinions of people who play golf, to support the economic projections of this project. So KIRC went out, and before the Planning Commission, and you have the report that was submitted Friday, hired a consultant, Ron Concierge, to analyze, a professional golf course consultant, to analyze the financial feasibility of this project. And he took issue with all those basic presumptions. For the golf course to survive, it's got to...
The downstream San Joaquin area will continue to develop and use this area as water resources, both surface and groundwater. And two, the ability to mitigate decades of groundwater declines in the basin underlying Calaveras County may be made more difficult. CCWD has been successful in Washington in securing authorization for the new Hogan Raw Water Infrastructure and Environmental Restoration Project through the Water Resource Development Act of 2007. That was a huge success. We're following up with that success by working through our federal legislators and in Sacramento to develop project funding for federal year, fiscal year 09-10 to help fund this New Hogan environmental and raw water infrastructure project. CCWD has also been successful in Sacramento at securing $250,000 grant to study groundwater through the local groundwater assistance program. We will be spending about $430,000 over the next 2 years to help develop a better understanding of this basin that's critically overdrafted underlying Calaveras County. And CCWD needs partners for all of these efforts that we've been successful at to date. CCWD is scheduling the spring static groundwater level monitoring program. We're going to be doing that late this month, early May. We're hoping to expand the groundwater monitoring program to include, we've included these wells in the past. We're continuing to monitor statics for the wells that you see on this board, as well as many others we've been monitoring since 2003. But the bottom line here is that CCWD needs regional support, both public and private partners, to continue to develop this groundwater management planning effort and to support state and federal efforts to secure funding for surface water supply infrastructure and to assure a sustainable water supply for the West County area. I wanted to mention, too, that I went through the existing county general plan. It does have a number of policies that basically state that the county's mandate is to preserve current water rights and develop additional water rights necessary to support the county's full development potential. Similar to that, we had a very diverse stakeholder process that developed the water element as part of the general plan update. As part of this diverse stakeholder group effort, we submitted the draft water element to the planning department, and there's a number of, I went through there and culled a number of policies and goals that were developed through this consensus-based approach. And I'm not going to go through them. You have the handouts before you, but basically they involve supporting water and wastewater agencies to develop new reliable future water supplies, to protect the county's water rights, to develop groundwater management plans through sustainable, adequate, safe, and economically viable groundwater supplies, conjunctive use, and that the county should encourage the use of alternate sources of water supply, such as surface water and recyclable water to the extent feasible, and so on. With that as a foundation, CCWD presents the following Trinitas-specific comments, and I thank you for bearing with me as I develop the foundation. I think you need to understand to help make a good decision when it comes to looking at the proposed rigid Trinitas project. CCWD has submitted a number of comments over the last couple of years on behalf of CCWD for this project, and we also provided testimony at the Planning Commission on a couple of occasions. And in each case, CCWD has consistently stated that as a groundwater management agency for the West County area, CCWD can support the use of groundwater in the West County area for this proposed development, provided that the following conditions are incorporated into the mitigation plan. Number one, a comprehensive groundwater monitoring plan for the proposed project be developed with input from CCWD and incorporated into CCWD's regional groundwater monitoring program for the West County area. Two, the groundwater monitoring program will include monthly monitoring, an annual report evaluating groundwater conditions, and options to address any adverse impact to the groundwater supply should they occur. Since the last time I commented on this, I've added a little detail for people to understand what I'm talking about here. If, for instance, a landowner can demonstrate that there is an impact to their well, then CCWD thinks that the appropriate mitigation measure is that the proposed project proponent should replace that well or provide an alternative water supply source that meets the needs of that landowner. That's what we're talking about in terms of a real mitigation measure if there's a demonstrated impact to a well. Three, that the property owner enter into an agreement with CCWD for a long-term financial commitment to ensure that adequate funding is available to support groundwater monitoring and reporting activities, data collection, and data analysis. Four, that water conservation programs be established by the project proponent in cooperation with CCWD to ensure the most efficient use of the water supply. And then fifthly, CCWD supports the staff mitigation measure 3.11-5B requiring monthly groundwater metering reports. We simply ask that that be provided to CCWD as the groundwater management agency and in cooperation with the county's environmental health department. I want to note as I reach the end of my comments that it should be noted that the mitigation measures, as I just identified in the FEIR, did not incorporate CCWD's proposed mitigation measures, items 1 through 4. And I believe staff had some concerns whether or not there was a legal ability to be able to make those statements. And doing a little legal research, because CCWD is the groundwater management agency for the area, I believe that we can work together to develop these mitigation measures that we're proposing here. And I think they would address any potential impacts should they occur.
Mr. Patterson, you have 3 minutes. But I just want to ask you quickly, have you discussed these proposed mitigation measures with the applicant?
I think they're aware of them. I've submitted these comments, same comments several times over the last several years.
All right, thank you.
Can you give a letter, do an extra copy to give to the applicant?
Sure.
Okay, please continue.
I'm just about done. I thank you for your patience. I know I covered a lot of material, but I think that there's a larger issue at stake here. I do want to remind the board, and I'm sure you've seen the letter before, it garnered headline attention. The project proponent did offer CCWD $80,000 toward groundwater monitoring support and $920,000 toward surface water supply infrastructure, pending county project approval. Trinitas has also provided CCW an easement to construct a $100,000 nested monitoring well on their property, which CCWD's board accepted by resolution the easements for that property to be able to put this $100,000 nested monitoring well. That should provide valuable benefit to our understanding of the basin. Trinitas also has proposed to make land available for a conjunctive use groundwater recharge project to benefit the West County area. Taken as a whole, these actions constitute a significant public benefit as they allow CCWD to continue developing partnerships with the public and private sector to implement a groundwater management plan through multiple activities, including the development of a sustainable regional conjunctive use program to ensure a long-term sustainable water supply for the West County area. As you know, CCWD's mission is to preserve and protect water resources and water rights of Calaveras County for the benefit of all residents and the environment. Surface water rights, also as you know, within the state of California operate under a number of principles, basically the use it or lose it principle, being one of the most pressing principles that I see going on right now throughout the state. So in closing, CCWD can support the use of groundwater for the proposed project provided those 5 conditions I mentioned are instituted. CCWD's goal for the West County area is to integrate surface water and groundwater supplies through a total resource management plan that provides a sustainable water supply for all users, urban, ag, and the environment. To be successful, CCWD needs partners at all levels of government, especially between the county and CCWD and across the public-private interface. And I might direct your attention to the last slide on your handout. This is the basin that defines the boundaries for the eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin underlying Calaveras County, and those are the boundaries that were adopted by CCWD's Board of Directors in 2001 as the groundwater management plan area. And when we talk about integrating surface water and groundwater, it's to the benefit of the entire West County area. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Patterson, other members of the board are obviously going to be asking you some questions here quickly, but could you reiterate for us, please, what your specific qualifications are, academic background and that kind of stuff?
My specific qualifications are approximately 17 years in managing water resources and groundwater. I have a graduate degree in hydrogeology and management, soils and water science, undergraduate degree from UC Davis. And I've been basically managing groundwater and surface water for various irrigation districts and water districts throughout the northern San Joaquin Valley and foothills since 1992.
Okay, thank you. And I think Supervisor Walensky has a question.
Yes, we have quite a few pages. I think I counted in the neighborhood of 165 pages on comments of water. And we have up to this point, three experts who had weighed in, one from the applicant, we have the geocon from the county, and we also have Keep It Rural has got a water expert too. They all refer to, in different terms, to the source of this water, and I have a question about that. Your document says that we're dealing with the Eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin. We have discussions from the applicant's water expert that we have two aquifers, an upper and a lower, and that comes from something called, I guess, the Valley Springs Basin. We have yet other terminology by the third water expert. Are all these the same thing in different configurations? Are they different? And if we have different theories about where the water is coming from, how can we work through your assumption of water availability? I very much want to get to the basis of where this water is emanating from. Can you help enlighten me?
I will do the best that I can, Director Walensky. When you talk about groundwater, you're talking about a hidden resource. Just very simply, a hidden resource. What does that mean? Well, we can go out to Pardee and Comanche reservoirs, and we can look at it, we can touch it, we can measure it. With the groundwater basin, I wish it was that simple. And that's why hydrogeologists basically are applied mathematicians, and they go through a lot of education to be able to understand a very real-world practical science. And the reality is the upper portion of the Eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin is very diverse. I'm going to use a technical term called heterogeneous. And the underlying aquifer formations basically, because it's heterogeneous and anisotropic, both very technical terms, basically describing that as you move in any direction, horizontally or vertically, you're experiencing diversity, within the soil matrix. But there are some simplifying assumptions we can make with the well drillers' logs that we've seen in the area that provide us information that there may be shallow and deeper aquifers. I think that's what Eugene Nelson is basing his analysis upon, and that's also some of the work that was done at Wallace Lake Estates when they hired some of the consultants to do the aquifer pump testing. However, in the Wallace Community Service District area, you're dealing with a ridge, the Campo Seco Ridge, that underlies the land surface between Comanche and what I consider the Eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin. So therefore, some of the application or the extrapolation from the aquifer pump testing done in Wallace CSD may not be appropriate for areas more within the groundwater basin map that you see here. Wallace CSD, as you know, is right along the boundary there. So I think it's difficult to try to extrapolate. I would also caution you not to extrapolate too much because of the diversity in the area. And I think that one of the qualitative nuggets of information we have is all the well production numbers you see. I mean, I've heard a number of instances where people can drill a well at this spot and get good well production, and you can move over 500 feet and get limited well production. That just goes to show you the diversity there is in this groundwater basin. So trying to get back to what you're asking me, is there enough information? I think what I can say right now is that on a limited basis in the short term, I think there's adequate, and this is what I think we can say at CCWD, there's adequate groundwater to meet the needs of the proposed project. But here's the bottom line and the nugget that I tell everybody. I've had Keep It Rural Calaveras and the Mayhews in my office. I've had project proponents and others in my office, and everyone asks these questions, and I tell everybody the same thing. The bottom line is this: you have a basin that's been in decline for decades. Whether you approve this project or not, I think the county needs to work with CCWD, and CCWD needs to work with the county to find a way to mitigate these falling groundwater levels and deteriorating groundwater quality. The only way I see that we can do that is by putting our surface water rights to beneficial use in this West County area. And the question asked of me is, well, if we do that, isn't that going to be growth inducing? And my response to that is, we've done a lot of agricultural water demand surveys, and I met a farmer out in the West County area that farms almost, well, he has 400 acres, but he's only farming 30 in vines under contract to Gallo because that's all his well will support. And if he had an economic, viable, reliable water supply, he'd put that full 400 acres, nearly 400 acres, into production. And really the answer here is, if we're going to do something to have a sustainable groundwater supply in the West County area, we have to introduce surface water in the long term. At some point, that's the solution. And the question is, how do we get there between where we're at now and when it's going to happen in the future? And then as long as we work together in terms of the general plan and as the land use planning agency, you know, you can support ag and it is not growth inducing in my mind. Now, your specific question, Steve, I think the only thing we can do is put these nested monitoring wells in, do aquifer pump testing on them, continue to do the groundwater monitoring and expand that program. But all these things take money. CCWD has spent over a couple of $1 million studying groundwater in this area. It is a very complicated area of science. You know, when you deal with some of these other basins like the Monterey Basin and Carmel, they had to adjudicate that basin and literally spent tens of millions of dollars. It's very expensive because you need attorneys, you need consultants and field work. We're not there yet, but what we do know is that we have surface water rights available. We need to integrate those supplies, and meanwhile, what we can do is expand our groundwater monitoring program, working together, and using these two new nested monitoring wells that will be going in this year. We have the USGS that's going to be doing some state-of-the-art science with these wells. We're going to learn a lot about this basin, more than we've ever known over the last century. And hopefully I can begin really answering the questions about what you really want to know, which is, what are the recharge sources? How much is the annual recharge? What are the extractions from this basin? How much are we losing past the San Joaquin County line? What's the mass balance? How much is there in storage? How long is this basin going to last before it catastrophically fails? What's the quality like? Are there problems where we'll lose the groundwater basin to quality before we lose supply? These are the kinds of questions that have to be answered that we don't have immediate answers to, but with the two new nested monitoring wells and a comprehensive groundwater monitoring program, I think we will begin to answer those questions in the near term. And I'm very encouraged that the USGS is involved. They're going to be presenting some of these answers to you within the next year or two. But meanwhile, I think we do have adequate water, but we do need to plan on how we're going to integrate surface water supplies with groundwater, because that's the only way you're going to mitigate the decades-long drawdown of this groundwater basin.
Any other questions from the board? I have one, Mr. Patterson. It doesn't take too observant a person driving around over in this, practically this whole area that you've got depicted as your groundwater basin to see that there's a marked difference in the surface geology. There's just miles and miles of what I would call alluvial deposits and stuff, you know, this size rocks and stuff, and they seem to be extraordinarily deep. A lot of places where you have unusual deposits of sand. The point of my question is this particular geology more conducive to this groundwater recharge that you've talked about before? If you put water on the surface, is it going to find its way back down into the reservoir?
Well, I've been on the project site. I've worked with Steve Abbey, who is a pump contractor in the area. He had been monitoring groundwater levels on the proposed project site. As part of our groundwater monitoring program, we have protocols about how you measure depth of water, accuracy, and how you record it. We're very interested in that protocol for QA/QC reasons, make sure it's accurate. And while I was out there monitoring Steve Abbey, who's doing the groundwater level monitoring the last couple of years, I did take a tour of the facility and site, and I saw some things that surprised me for the uplands area. In essence, I saw white sands in areas that would confirm some of the old reports that there are some tertiary stream channels, basically old buried stream channels that meander through this West County area, in essence a braided channel network at depth that probably have what are considered good permeability, and probably why some of these wells are so productive. But those meandering tertiary buried stream channels are very hit and miss. No one knows exactly where all of them are at, but the recharge potential from those tertiary stream channels are probably pretty good, and the permeability, which means its ability to transmit flow through those deposits, are very good, hence some of the good well production numbers that you see in this area. So there is some very productive groundwater deposits in the area, if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, it does. Okay, if there are no further questions for Mr. Pedersen, we'll say goodbye.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Could you please identify yourself?
Mr. Chairman, supervisors, my name is Gene Nelson. I am a certified engineering geologist in the state of California, number 27. I have worked in Calaveras County since 1970, mainly on water supply projects, groundwater projects. I graduated from the California Institute of Technology in geology. There was no such thing as hydrogeology when I graduated. It's been invented since then. But engineering geologists customary work on many different aspects of geology, all the way from groundwater to foundation conditions and faulting and landslides. I'd like to be brief. You'll be relieved to hear. I want to address three specific issues relative to water supply, groundwater supply in this project area. One is the availability of groundwater sufficient to satisfy the project requirements. The second one is what effect extraction of groundwater on the property will have on existing wells in the surrounding area, if any. And the third, Ed Patterson has really talked enough about, I guess. I was going to talk about ongoing monitoring programs, which are certainly essential to better define groundwater conditions in the area. The Valley Springs Formation is a fairly unique geologic formation. It's 50 to 70 million years old. It was initially deposited in the ages called Oligocene through Miocene. And it was deposited at a time when there was a lot of volcanic activity in the crest of the Sierras. So, as Ed mentioned, there are streams buried within the 500-foot thickness of the Valley Springs Formation that have much greater ability to transmit water than surrounding sediments, which are finer grained. And as he states, the only way that you can find these is to drill and see if they're there. There's no way you can do it geophysically or by any other means. And I asked Mike Nemi if when he bought this property, he knew anything about the subsurface geology. And he said, why no, I was driving by and the property looked nice, and so I made an offer on it and was able to buy it. Well, he lucked out. It's probably the best place that I've been able to become aware of within the Valley Springs Formation outcrop area as far as extracting water, because it's thick here. It's 500 feet plus thick underneath his property versus In the Wallace area, about 200 feet, as Mr. Patterson mentioned, it's on a ridge. And there are many other areas. Most of the other areas within the 35 square mile outcrop area of the Valley Springs Formation are much shallower than what exists beneath the NEMI property. Now, the availability of groundwater in the Valley Springs Formation, let me address that first. It's estimated that 1.6 billion with a B, gallons of water annually infiltrate into the Valley Springs Formation. Now, that's from rainfall soaking into the surface of fields and the land. It's from streams. Stream flow and subsurface flow are connected. Surface flow in streams penetrates the sediments underlying the streams and becomes groundwater. And then the groundwater flows in the same direction as the slope of the land surface, which in this area is to the west or southwest. So all the water in the Valley Springs Formation flows in that direction to the west. Now, what happens to this water once it's in the Valley Springs Formation? Well, the existing extraction in this part of the county from wells within the Valley Springs Formation is something on the order of 1,300 acre-feet per year. Whereas the total amount that flows farther into San Joaquin County is almost 1 billion acre-feet per year, which supplies Central Valley farmers. So the Valley Springs Formation acts as a conduit to move that water from higher ground to lower ground. And so to put it into perspective, the amount extracted in Calaveras County is 0.135% of the total that flows through. Now, if the golf course is put into the position of extracting more water, is that going to affect it? Well, maybe a little blip. Maybe it'll go from 0.0135 to 0.0150. But still, the vast majority of the water will continue to go to the farmers in San Joaquin County, tens of miles to the west of here. The second issue is whether the extraction of water by the golf course wells will affect existing wells owned by people in surrounding areas. Now, there's a cross-section up here that I don't know if you can see or not. I don't think anybody in the audience can see it anyway, so I'm going to turn it towards the supervisors. This is a diagrammatic cross-section. This is the Torritas site. These are deeper wells on the Torritas property that are as deep as 550 feet. These are wells in the surrounding area, shallower wells. They're called shallow. They're 200 to 300 feet deep, but they don't penetrate these deeper, better aquifers. And that's the difference between them. They have sealing layers of clay between the upper aquifers and the lower aquifers. And they're called aquiflues. Water can't move up and down vertically. When you drill a deep well and you penetrate the deep aquifers 400 to 500 feet down, water surges up in the well 100 feet. Now, how do you explain that? Unless they're not interconnected. They are not interconnected. There may be some leakage, 5% may leak from the lower aquifers under pressure, artesian pressure, because the area where the water goes into the Valley Springs Formation is higher than this area, so it's pressurized. And that's one thing that keeps them separate, is that there are these clay layers. Now, as Ed has said, geology everywhere in California is complicated. It's not like Iowa or Illinois, where you have layer cake situations with beds, continuous beds extending for hundreds of miles. Here, everything's all chopped up, just like you see today. If you were to bury the face of the western slope of the Sierra Nevada, you would have geologic situation is very difficult to decipher and find out where the streams were formerly. So it's my contention that pumpage on these wells, and they have been pumped now for several years, is not going to affect the shallower wells in the surrounding area because they're separated by these barriers, these lateral barriers. Now, they're not perfect separations. As I mentioned, there may be some leakage. And lastly, I'd like to mention this. Ed referred to a cluster well or a nested well. This well is not being installed to pump water. It's being installed to provide information on water flow, pressures and flows of water at depth. So it's a well that has several different piezometer tips at different elevations, and then they're sealed off from each other with bentonite clay in the well so that they record pressure from that specific elevation, that specific depth below the ground surface. So this well will be very important, and there's supposed to be another one eventually, but this one's really going to happen, I think, because Mr. Nemi has allowed them to have an easement on his land, and they propose to drill this well this summer. I'm hopeful that will happen, and I believe that this new technique for this area that's been used in many other areas will provide a lot more information than we presently have. It's an imperfect science. Geologists have to see down through the layers of the earth. That's a little bit tough, so they have to be kind of artists based on their experience and able to say what they predict will be there. Thank you very much for your time.
Any questions of Mr. Nelson? Thank you very much, sir. Okay, as we earlier stated, I wanted to give people that have expertise in various disciplines an opportunity to talk before we take the comments from the general public. So do we have any other geologists or, I guess, how about professional ranchers? If not, is this? Okay. How wonderful.
My name's Lynette Ospitale.
Ah.
I'm right across the way from the Trinitas project. We have sheep. Sheep, as you know, are herding animals. They get stressed very easily. I had last year 53 lambs. This year I only have 4 lambs. My sheep are being stressed all the time from this project. They can have infertility, abortion, stillborn, loss of lambs, and death from being stressed all the time. I have a 4-year-old mare that's in the corral. When Mr. Nemi had, after the planning commission, he had a tournament, I had to move my mare because she was so flustered and everything. I had to move her out of where she was in the corral to another spot because she was getting so stressed out. And my sheep also at night, I have to put them in a pen because of coyotes. I put them in a pen. This pen is located right where our corrals is, which right across the street. If he has events and the lighting, all this noise is going to stress my sheep. And like I said, they'll get stressed very easily. And everybody's talking about the water and that we have no problem. I'll bring the sand up if you want to see it. But in January 2007, our well went dry. We had to go down deeper. On March 13th, my water pressure went from 50 down to 20. I called our service out. He opened up my drain, nothing but sand came out. I have the sand back there if you want to see it, and water. He couldn't even get my filter out which I have, for filtering, he couldn't even get it out. He had to rinse that out in order to get that out. That was full of sand. So now they're recommending that we watch it every month, check it every month. But our well was fine before the golf course ever went in. We had no problem, clear water, everything. After it went in, I've had to let where I have our chickens, the water run, so that I don't get sand. Sometimes I had to give them sandy water because I had no choice. And it's just, you say that the county has a right to farm ordinance that says the right to farm still takes precedence over all adjoining or nearby lands, uses. You let this go in, it's going to, like that other gentleman said earlier, it's just going to change the whole agricultural. There's nothing but livestock on the other end, on this side of him. There's cattle and my sheep and then more cattle. This is going to change it forever. And the road. And like I said, our sheep are our main livelihood.
Ms. Oswald, excuse me, you have consumed 3 minutes here. Thank you very much for your comments.
My name is David Hirsch, and I am a professional farmer and have been for the last 25 years. I do live on Southworth and Hospital Roads, Elizabeth Court. I am the grape farmer who uses the 30 million gallons of water per month just adjacent to Mrs. Hospital's farm. I'm west of Trinitas about 2 miles, and the amount of water, the 30 million gallons of water per month that I use is the amount of water that would be used by Mr. Nemi had he put in 280 acres of grapes instead of the golf course. This would equate to 2.5 times the amount of water that is being used for his entire project if you choose to approve it. The installation of a vineyard would also require Mr. Nemi to remove the nearly 6,000 oak trees that he has chosen to protect. The wildlife habitat that he has created would never exist if the golf course was not built. The Nemi should get credit for proposing a project that balances the value of natural resources with ag and recreational land use. This is an approach that is consistent with the county's general plan. I also support the approval of the entire project for its consistency with the general plan in the following areas. General Plan Goal 4-9, preserve the county's current water rights and additional water rights necessary to support the county's full developmental potential. Policy 4-9A, support the development of water projects in the county for domestic irrigation purposes. Approving the entire project would allow Trinitas to fund a significant portion of a private-public partnership with CCWD to bring surface water to the area for beneficial use in agricultural operations. This effort would preserve 30,000 acre-feet of surface water rights that we currently hold in New Hogan Reservoir. Those water rights are currently being pursued by Stockton Water Interests to serve agricultural and residential development that already exist or has been approved in San Joaquin County. This should be alarming to all Calaveras County citizens. Constructing a surface water pipeline to put that water to beneficial use in our county is in the best interest of all county residents. By improving the entire project as proposed, the Board of Supervisors would be fulfilling its duty under General Plan Implementation Measure 4-9A-1 to pursue available funding sources for the development of water projects in the county, and particularly in the western half of the county. Trinitas would be contributing a total of $6.5 million towards the cost of the entire surface water project of $30 million. CCWD is currently seeking the $30 million in federal stimulus funds, but will need the help of Trinitas' contribution and job creation component to qualify it for the funding. Failing to approve the entire project would put the future of water rights of Calaveras residents at risk and would eliminate the opportunity to seek available funding sources for the development of water projects in this county. Please vote yes on the entire project as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. Any questions of Mr. Hirsch? Okay, thank you. Thank you for keeping your comments brief. Yes, sir.
My name is Gene Davenport. I'm the former Secretary-Treasurer of the San Joaquin Calaveras Labor Council. I'm now a delegate to that body, and I've been coming and addressing this board to specific questions on the labor issue to this project. But a couple things that were stated earlier. I know people are giving you their honest opinions about things, but I don't think Mr. Conley golfs, because he said it would cannibalize other local golf courses by 50%, and then his economist said it would be 30%. 10 minutes after he said 50%. And I don't think any of those figures are right. I think it's less than that. We had, in San Joaquin County, we had 3 new golf courses installed within a 15-year period, and it did less than 10% initial draw from the other courses, and it was only temporary. It went back to the regular numbers within 6 months. Secondly, I own a race mare who's in full, and she is stabled for 2 years at the same ranch in Lodi. It's literally bounded by Highway 12 and the Union Pacific Railroad tracks. And my mare has been in foal twice. There's no stress involved. I think you can interpret that any way you want. I don't know anything about lambs, so I won't talk about them. But I can only talk about my horse. But as to the point of what this is going to do for the labor community in this area, the Trinidad project, the outlay right now is for 60 full-time regular family wage jobs. That's very important and key. That is permanent. I think in the initial stage of this project, it will create more than that in just the temporary jobs that we will produce through the infrastructure projects. It's important to understand that these are going to be permanent jobs, not temporary jobs. And I don't think there's many new developments coming in that bring with that. And when this project first started going and we became involved in it from a labor standpoint, I didn't see eye to eye with Mr. Nemi. I still don't. But the thing is, he's been willing to meet us halfway to a point. We've tried contacting the groups on the other side, and they've been very adamantly opposed to any meeting of the minds. I think what we need to do, send all the lawyers out on a fishing trip for a couple of weeks, get the parties together, and see if they can't start some kind of conversation to settle this, because I think this is a wonderful project for this community as it pertains to this community. It boundaries San Joaquin County, and it's just going to create an environment where it's going to be beneficial to all those that partake in it. I really believe that. That being said, Ms. Callaway, on the Audubon issue, I think you're going to find a lot of golf courses. Almost every one on the Monterey Peninsula is along with that same association, the Audubon Association. That was founded, I think, 25 or 30 years ago through the auspices of the national organization. It's a standalone group, but you have also like Stevenson Ranch outside of Modesto that work with WWF to build their golf course. It's a natural habitat for animals. There's a lot of organizations that get involved with different groups like this, and they just lend their names. They don't give them their names, they lend them. And I think it's an offshoot of that. I think that's what if you look into it, I think you'll find that. But back to the labor issue, I think this is going to benefit this county with permanent positions as it goes forward. And like I say, everything else can be, I honestly believe if you sat down with these people, you guys can come to some consensus. But with the lawyers' involvement and the figures that everybody's throwing out, I don't see you guys getting a true opinion on anything, because I mean seriously, Mr. Conley's 50% is so out of line. I don't understand it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Steve Elias, county resident, living in the great state of D2. And if this project passes, we might have to secede. I'm actually here today as...
Is that a threat or a promise?
I'm here today on behalf of Sierra Club. You know, our organization, I know, has sent a detailed 13-page letter to you folks in relation to this project. I'm not going to bother to quote from it or to read it, but the project really cannot go forward under the current general plan. There's a lot of reasons for that, but as I said, I don't want to get into them at this point. Our two huge problems with this project are, number one, violation of Williamson contract, and number two, the fact that the project just got created, the golf course. When I say the project, I'm not talking about what's being proposed in the future. I'm talking about the fact that we have a golf course that basically got created with no permits at all. You know, I did attend the Planning Commission meeting, the first one, and basically I felt pretty overwhelmed by it all, because really all we heard was, you know, from the proponents of the project was, the folks came forward and they said, look, you just have to go out there. You have to stand there on this piece of property and look how beautiful this golf course is, and you're not going to have a problem with this golf course. This is a beautiful thing that we've created. I mean, there was a parade of people who all got up in the same and said the same thing. I'm sitting there listening to this the whole time, and I'm thinking to myself, well, when is anybody going to talk to the permitting process and the violation of Williamson contract? When is that ever going to even get mentioned? There was a point at the very beginning of the meeting when Mrs. Nemi got up and said to everybody, look, you know, I don't see what the problem is with the planning department here. I don't see the problem that people are having with the whole process.
Mr.
Because in 05...
Excuse me, sir, you're at 3 minutes. I didn't warn you when you had a minute left, so I'll let you go on.
I thought you said if you were a group like Sierra Club, you got 15.
Well, will there be other people talking besides you from CSERC?
Well, I'm representing Sierra Club. There won't be any other Sierra Club folks here speaking besides myself.
Okay, I stand corrected. Excuse me.
So where was I?
However, I will point out.
So I remember where I was.
I will point out to you, sir, that the issues that you are alluding to about the alleged building without permits, it's all vetted out extensively in the final EIR. And there's discussions about that. There's conclusions drawn about those allegations. So this isn't new information.
Right, but you know, the point that I'm making is that the issues never really got addressed. The fact that this project went forward, the golf course went forward without being permitted. The only person who spoke to that was Mrs. Nemi, and she said, look, we had this discussion in 05, and there was no problems. You know, everybody sat around together and agreed, the planning department and the proponents of Trinitas. The problem was that in 05, the golf course was already built. You know, it was already an existing thing. When I mentioned the Williamson contract stuff, there was nothing talked about until the very end of the hearing. Well, it wasn't the very end. It was close to the very end when the attorney for the Nemes at that time, it wasn't Mr. Abbott, but she got up and she said, look, you know what? We didn't violate any Williamson contract at all, period, end of discussion. That was it. There was no more mention of it. To me, that was not a defense that was at all viable. You know, you've heard from different people in the past and going forward about the problem with water. Okay, that's a very, very serious concern. It's a viable concern. We stand behind that concern. You've also heard about traffic and circulation. That's another very serious concern. Another huge concern is the fact that this project is being plunked down in the middle of this ag area, and it's a total, you know, what it will do, it's leapfrog development. You know, you put this project here, what's to prevent the next project from going along in the same direction? You've got serious concerns with leapfrog development, but from our organization's point of view, because we care so much about preserving open space, from our point of view, the main question is Williamson contract violation, and secondly, the total ignoring of the planning process going down. How much of my time have I used, sir?
7 minutes.
7 minutes. I got 7 minutes to go. Okay, I want to address this big picture question that Mr. Abbott mentioned at the very beginning. He said, you know, folks, really the big picture question in relation to Trinitas, and I'm quoting him, is what sort of land use do you want in the county? Okay, I'm sorry, but to me that is not the big question, the big picture question. To me, the big picture question in relation to Trinitas is how this project could have got to this point in the first place. You know, how did we get to this point with an unpermitted project? So we're all sitting here and seriously considering it. The big question to my mind going forward at this point is if you care about the future of land use in the county, and if you care at all about the planning process itself, how you could seriously consider signing